Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOT. And this week we're going over UFC Vegas 33, headlined by Sean Strickland and Uriah Hall in a pivotal middleweight bout, probably the biggest fight of Sean Strickland's career. Will he fuck it up? Who probably knows? The guy goes out there and just wants to bang with some of these guys when he probably shouldn't, Jack Marshman, but he's still able to go out there and get the win. But I think he has a little bit more problems ahead of him here with Uriah Hall. So I can't wait to break down this entire card with you guys. Obviously, we were scheduled to have 15 fights at the beginning of the week. Here we are, just picking out our scraps. We got 11 fights left to break down for you guys, but still should be some decent fights. No name value, but you guys know us. We're gambling degenerates. We're MMA gambling degenerates, so we want to go out there and try to maximize our earning potential every Saturday fucking night. So obviously, I got a great cast of guests with me that I'm going to be introducing in a couple minutes, but I quickly want to remind you guys, tomorrow, the Fight Day live chat is normally at 1 p.m. Eastern, but it's actually going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern this time around because I'm actually heading up to Z's place, Rockstar Z's place. Me and him are going to be doing a fight companion together for the entire card, as well as Bellator in person. Obviously, that's the best way to do it, in my opinion, rather than having 5 different people fucking with 20 seconds apart in their streams and spoiling it for each other. So tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, Fight Day Live chat. I'll be doing it with Z for an hour, and then 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be going live on his channel for the Fight Companion. Once again, we'll be doing the UFC show as well as the Bellator show, so it should be a good time. Make sure you guys swing on by. All right, let me start bringing in these guys, these heavy hitters. You guys were super excited for this event, especially with the lineup that I got. We gotta, again, not the greatest card, but you gotta spice it up by bringing some heavy hitters so that we can at least find some decent betting spots for you guys this week. All right. First and all foremost, my guy Clint. Clint, what's going on, brother?
Not a whole lot, buddy. Always looking forward to doing another fun show with you, talking some fights. Hasn't been that long, like you said, shit card, but we're going to have some fun tonight.
Absolutely. I did your show last week when I was like, you know what? I didn't get enough Clint. Let's get him on the fucking show again this week. And I'm sure the fans and viewers will really enjoy it. So I'm always happy to have you on and chop this shit up. Next up, we're going to bring in my guy, John Stargarian, MMA Fox. John, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, guys? How about this fucking card, huh? But yeah, I'm pumped to get to it, man. Thanks for having me on again. I got some takes, so.
Oh, I know you do, which is why I love having you on, dude. There's not many people that have the contrarian takes that my guy John has, but when it works out like it did last week, I'm sure more than enough people are going to want to listen to what my guy John has to say. And lastly, we're going to bring in my guy James from Lucrative MMA. James, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, boys? Nice to be here. This is a pretty historic day, one of the worst cards of the year, so I'm happy to be here. Hopefully we can make it a little bit more fun, though, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to make sure that we had a star-studded crew for this, so at least people would tune in and listen to what we got to say, and I'm sure all of us have some spots on here that we feel pretty good about, and some other spots that we're probably just like, we got 10 other fights that we can talk about. So, all right, let's not waste too much more time. Let's just get into this goddamn card. First and foremost, we got Orion Cosce going up against Philip Rowe. Philip Rowe obviously missing weight this morning, one of the few guys that did. At least he made it to the scale, but he did miss weight by 2.5 pounds. Didn't look the greatest on the scales, but I don't think it's going to be to the point that it's actually going to hinder his performance here. I do think that he'll still go out there and still have his facilities about him. I think his range striking here is going to be a little bit difficult for Cosce to get used to. Cosce, obviously the brother of Louis Cosce, who shit the bed back in November as a very significant favorite against Sasha Palatnikov. But the difference between the Cosce brothers, I feel that Orion actually has more experience going deeper into fights, whereas Louis was just going out there and absolutely stifling guys. With that said, even when Orion goes deeper into fights, it gets a little shady outside of that Matt Dixon fight, even though it seemed like Matt Dixon was the one huffing and puffing a little bit more. But I do think he could run into some troubles here with Phil Rowe. I think if Phil Rowe keeps his distance, lands those 1-2s down the middle, kind of keeps this fight at range. You guys even saw it at the stare downs this morning. Very huge height discrepancy in this spot. And I think that Philip Rowe should do a decent enough job in terms of keeping Orion Cosce on the outside, kind of pick him apart, maybe get a late finish. I do think that Orion does have some gas tank issues. There's so many red flags in terms of, watching his regional tape going up against bums and he's pulling guillotine and dropping to his back on certain spots, and it's not a good look at all. I have said in the past that I do think that Rowe is somewhat green in his own right, but I do think that he has the better skills here to actually pull off the victory, especially as an underdog. And even though he missed weight, I still think that he has a good shot to go out there and get the finish or get the win here. Possibly third round split. spot. I've definitely thrown it out there as the round 3 prop is kind of live in this spot, I believe. But I do think that he's going to end up winning this fight by decision. Probably one of my favorite dog spots on the card, to be honest. Although I did make my dog when I play a plus money total that I'll talk about later on this card. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably have played Rowe as my dog of the night play for this card. So I do like Rowe and Rowe by decision, but potentially round 3 as well. Clint, I know you got a pretty big play here on my guy Phil Rowe, so break it down for us. What do you see, and why do you like it so much?
Man, this is just kind of turned into one of my favorite spots on the entire card. My whole night's going to hinge on the first fight of the night, man. So first off, when I looked at this thing early on in the week, they had Philip Rowe as a plus 165, plus 170 underdog. And after I did my tape, I looked it over, I was like, bro, what are you doing? I was like, that's just a ridiculous price tag for this fight. So I loaded up 2 units on Phil Rowe at plus 165 at that number. And man, I think the weigh-ins has a whole lot to do with this, but I tossed another 2 on him at plus 130 because I just still am starting to think that it's not enough. This should be a straight pick 'em. Otherwise, Phil Rowe should probably even be the favorite. We saw what happened with Orion Cosce's brother the last time he stepped into the cage. You know, he shit the bed as a gigantic favorite. They're doing the same thing here with Orion. He's a farm strength guy. You know what I mean? He's got a big left hand. He's a grinder. He's going to look to get in there and take you down. And then he just breaks guys over the course of 15 minutes. I don't think you can do that to Phil Rowe, man. Phil Rowe is 2 freaking weight classes larger than this man. He's got a literal 9-inch reach advantage, which is unheard of. And this guy trains with guys like Rodolfo Vieira, Jared Gooden, Gerald Mearshart, Glover. Like, you're not going to outgrind this man when you've got a size disadvantage against him. I think Philip Rowe's going to be able to defend the takedowns. If he can't defend them, get up. If he's on his back, he's going to have sweeps. You know, big, tall, long, strong guys like that, they can do shit on the ground that short guys just can't quite understand. So I think he's got opportunities to tie up Cosce. And then on the feet, man, maybe their striking is comparable, but that 9-inch reach, I think, is going to win the day. So I think we got a pick 'em shot, or maybe Rowe should even be considered the favorite. So after seeing him missed weight, this, in my opinion, is one of those good weight misses because he's too big for 170. He's not making it all the way down to 170 flat. He's getting a couple of extra pounds allowance. He's going to be way bigger come fight night. I think that size makes a difference. I loaded up. I'm on Phil Rowe.
John, when we get prospects like these that are obviously groomed by the local promotions that they're with, it was just so unnerving for me to listen to the commentary that whenever you're watching these Cosce fights, because these guys are all over these guys, not even giving their opponent a bit of shine. They're just all over Cosce and Orion, but we definitely see them get exposed once they come to the UFC. Do you think that Orion will fit the bill of his brother, who obviously fell flat on his face in his debut, or do you think that Phil Rowe is the side here as well?
Well, you know I love my Contender Series fades, first and foremost. But, it's kind of funny because when Phil Rowe came into the UFC, I was extremely anti-Phil Rowe. I didn't think he really showed a whole lot when he fought on Contender Series against Leon Shabazian. You know, not his regional tape, not very impressive. He doesn't manage distance particularly well for a guy that big. But to be honest, and, I think he's pretty fragile. But to be honest, he actually kind of impressed me against Gabe Green because, while obviously Green messed up his leg pretty badly and ended up winning that fight, it was a close decision. And I kind of thought going into that, Green was just going to be able to bite the mouthpiece, go forward, and do whatever he wanted to him. And he actually showed a competency, in particular in the striking, that I just hadn't seen from him before. Obviously, he's a very long guy, and we knew he was a pretty decent submission grappler. But honestly, his wrestling looked pretty solid in that spot as well. And so it's funny because I went from being pretty anti-Rowe to being kind of intrigued by him after that fight. And on the other hand, I had recalled pre-tape here, and, this is really the real credence to tape more than anything else, being somewhat impressed with Orion Cosce off of his Contender Series fight. And then going back and watching it being what was I? Was I just impressed because I bet him plus 220 there? I don't really – look, obviously the guy hits very hard. Well, I should say he's knocked out a bunch of guys regionally. He hits hard. He's tough. He's obviously got a lot of heart. He's a reasonable defensive grappler, but I don't see a whole lot that he does very well. He hits hard and he's tough, but he's not very tactical striking wise. His output's pretty low. Dixon's a wrestler, really, not a striker, and he was lighting him up on the feet, without much issue. And so I was looking at him well, does he close distance well? It's not really. He kind of comes up short with a lot of his shots, doesn't really follow through or blitz to close distance. And so, like, I look at this fight, it's like I have major concerns about Rowe's durability. Like, look, his leg got beaten up bad by Green in that fight. That's a concern. I still think someone that gets inside is going to be able to hurt him bad, just because I don't think his head movement, if you can get inside the reach, is the best. But at the end of the day, like, skill for skill, I think Rowe's better pretty much everywhere here. I think he's the cleaner boxer. I think his output's probably going to be a bit more reliable. I honestly think he's probably the better wrestler. Like, I'm not saying Cosce can't hit takedowns, but look, yeah, I know he finished Matt Dixon on the mat, but Dixon was completely gassed out. Like, that's not a particularly meaningful sequence for me, especially after he got out wrestled for pretty much that entire fight. And, like, I'm not saying I'm super confident in Rowe. Look, like I said, he's got a ton of issues durability-wise, but I do think, when you're dealing with somebody who, at least to me, I think is far more skilled, it's like the worst I could price him, even with those fragility issues, is like 50, 55%. So, like, I picked up that plus 170 for a couple units. Look, Cosce's very live for a finish, but I do think if this goes the full way, Rowe's going to probably win the minutes here fairly easily.
I love that earlier you said that you were anti-Rowe before. So is it safe to say that you're pro? No? Okay. I swung for the fences. I swung for the fences. God damn it. James, are you going to make this a unanimous decision here on the underdog? Do you like Philip Rowe in this spot against Ryan Cosce?
I think there's value on Rowe. I'll say that. So if I was able to do the tape, or if I did the tape when it was at plus 170, plus 160, like the boys did, I would also be on Rowe. It would be unanimous, right? But when I did the tape, I saw plus 130. So it was real recent. Like, I think I watched this fight yesterday. A little bit behind this week because of Bellator and stuff. So look, man, I agree with a lot of what John said, to be honest, and Clint as well. I was also not very high on Rowe when he came in and fought Gabriel Green. I had a bet on Gabriel Green in that fight, and I also took the under in that fight. I think the thing about that fight, though, is that, look, Rowe definitely shocked me, surprised me, looked a lot better than I thought he would. But I also thought, and still think, Gabe Green could have got him out of there if he wasn't so fucking stupid, right? There was a couple of times in that fight where it looked like Gabe Green had him on skates, and then he kicked him in the balls, or I think he punched him in the balls. The ref stopped it. That gave Rowe a lot of time to recover. Who knows what would have happened if that didn't happen? I don't like to play that game, what would have happened if, but that is still a factor, right? It did look like Rowe was quite hurt. And then there was another point where Rowe's leg was completely done. Gabriel Green initiates grappling, right? If he doesn't initiate grappling, steps back, hits the calf kicks, maybe he gets Phil Rowe out of there, right? So, look, he definitely impressed me, but I also thought that there was a couple of opportunities could be stopped there in a few different ways, right? Punches and then the calf kicks. When it breaks down to this fight, I feel like, yeah, there's value on Rowe. I think it's like a 50-50 fight, but I do think Rowe is very vulnerable, like John was saying. I can see Cosce just landing one shot after getting his face jabbed off for a couple of minutes, and then Rowe kind of just crumbling to the ground. Cosce gets on top. He either finishes him or steals the round. So I would be on Rowe if the price was better. And then at this price, I would still be on Rowe if I hadn't seen that much vulnerability in his game. Like, he can be winning 8-9 minutes, and then I feel like, we haven't seen it that much, but I feel like he's the type of fighter that can just fucking lose it after winning 10 minutes in a row, right? So I don't really like to bet on them fighters where I'm going to be worrying the whole 15 minutes, but plus 170, definitely a good bet, definitely the side. And the line movement shows it, because it's definitely a lot closer to where the line is now is where I line it. So, yeah, man. I mean, final prediction, I'd say it's a 50-50 fight, so I'm not saying anyone's going to win, but definitely value on the Rowe side for sure.
John, you had something to add, brother?
No. I'm sorry.
Okay, it looked like you're gesturing like, hey, I got something.
I was thinking about it, but then Lucrative just addressed it, so I was like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything else.
Yeah, no, James, I'm definitely with you. I believe I was on the under 2.5 in that fight as well, and it was so frustrating to see so many openings for finishes, and it just doesn't transpire as well. So that was definitely very again, a big piss off there. But yeah, it looks like everybody's on Rowe for the most part on this panel, and for good reason. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. A fight that was originally scheduled for May, I believe it was, and Ryan Benoit had a horrible weight cut, probably one of the worst scenes I've ever seen at a weigh-in. But it looks like he was in much better shape this week, making the scales, making 126 pounds, and he's going up here against Saruka Adashev. In terms of the line, we got minus 145 we got Jesus. Best fight odds completely flipped the odds here. There we go. Minus 120 for Ryan Benoit, plus 100-ish for Zaruk Adashev. Clint, I'm actually going to let you kick this one off for us, brother. Who do you got between these flyweights?
All right. Shout out to my guy, Exonis. Who you got? So what we've got here, man, is a very, very questionable fight. And it sucks because all the action we've lost on this card, all the fights pulling out and all the cancellations, they're making me want to bet this one because it's what's left on the damn slate. We got a short favorite in Ryan Benoit, and I think that that's appropriate, man. Both these guys are essentially 500 fighters. Benoit's got a lot more experience in MMA. We know Zaruk Adashev is actually a pretty solid kickboxer. He surprised a lot of people going 15 minutes with Sumajiri last fight out. If you don't mix up the game, this guy can stand with just about anybody. He is slick on the feet, but he's a little undersized, and he doesn't have his wits about him when it comes to the ground game. And that's where Ryan Benoit is actually a guy who's been messed up by people grappling with him in his UFC career. I think he can flip the script. He's a BJJ brown belt. He's been working hard to patch that game up. He's been trying to close that gap, and now he finally is the better wrestler of the two. I think he can take this guy down. I think the fact that Ryan Benoit is a much more well-rounded mixed martial artist with a higher level of experience has him being a deserving favorite. And then on top of that, this is a southpaw versus orthodox style fight, and that's going to open up the left-hand side of Ryan Benoit. That's where all his power comes from. He's got a big left hand, and he throws these bombing left body kicks. We've seen Zaruk Adashev hurt. We've seen him knocked out in 2 of his losses already. I mean, I think Ryan Benoit stands a chance to finish this fight on the feet, on the ground. He could just grind this guy out. He's the bigger of the 2 men. It makes sense. I think it's Zaruk Adashev. I'm sorry, not Zaruk. It's Ryan Benoit. It's favored or pass in this type of a situation.
Shout out to Sweet D here. Benoit sub at plus 1,800 is not too bad of a spot considering the grappling advantage he should have in this fight. John, do you carry the same sentiments as Clint, or do you think that
shout out Sweet D as well there? That is a pretty nice spot. Actually, while you introduce this fight, I have best fight odds up here, and I literally just went on Bet365 and bet Ryan Benoit for 2 units. Yeah, I guess.
Was that convincing, huh?
I am not. I'm
sorry, John. Let me just interject real quick here. According to best fight odds, Benoit is plus 650 via sub at certain spots, and the best I'm seeing is plus 1,400 at a couple spots. So maybe it's that book specifically that Sweet D got plus 1,800. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been just kind of waiting all week for the line and the weigh-in. Like, I'm not a guy who really worries too much about weigh-ins, but obviously, after what happened to Benoit on the scale the last time his fight was booked, that is a bit of a concern because I had a bet on him then too, and fortunately, he didn't make the walk the next day because he looked awful. But honestly, I guess my view is, if you're going to beat Ryan Benoit, historically, there's 2 archetypes that really beat him. They're guys that wrestle very aggressively offensively, and he's actually cleaned up that part of his game a decent amount. And then you have like real volume strikers. Like, you look at his fight, how he lost to Tim Elliott. It was kind of just Elliott kind of just spamming volume at him. Adashev doesn't really check either of those boxes. And that's before like kind of you even get into the other intangible stuff. Like, look, the guy's got 6 fights. He had 4 fights coming into the UFC, clearly wasn't ready, got nuked. He got a fight against Sumajiri that he clearly wasn't ready for. He's just he's swimming in the deep end when he probably needs 10 to 15 fights to even get consideration for this promotion. It just so happened that he came into the promotion during COVID times when epic 4 or 5 fights were getting canceled every single week. And like, I look at him skill-wise, and, I see people making the case for him being, an excellent striker because he has a glory background, but like, I don't see it. Like, I get it. There are guys like Israel Adesanya who were elite kickboxers before becoming elite MMA strikers. But striking both in Muay Thai and in professional kickboxing is very, very different from striking in MMA. Just, the 4-ounce gloves just provide, a totally different game, especially defensively. And you see that with Adashev. He's not defensively sound at all. He doesn't really have any way to maintain distance on the outside. Everything is blitz oriented. And when you look at like on minutes, classically, the biggest issue in Benoit's game has been his low volume. Adashev against Mudirji, who gave him a 15-minute striking match, was horribly low volume in that fight as well. And like, I'm not necessarily comparing Benoit's striking to Mudirji, but we saw him in a 15-minute kickboxing match, and it didn't look like he was on this level, even if you want to throw out the Tyson Nam fight. And so, yeah, I guess my view is I don't think Adashev, even if Benoit decides just entirely to not wrestle him, I don't think he's going to offer Benoit much that he hasn't seen in the past. I think pretty much every guy Benoit's beaten would be a pretty solid favorite over Adashev in this spot. And obviously the guys who have beaten Benoit mostly I think would be huge favorites over Adashev. Yeah, I mean, if he beats Benoit, okay, but he has so much more experience, and I just think so much more tools that work for MMA than Adashev has.
James, it's not often that you hear people talking up Ryan Benoit to this level, but that's definitely, that not just John, but Clint as well. But that definitely tells you and lets you know what kind of matchup we got ahead of us here. Do you see the fight the same way that these guys do, or do you think that Adashev is a little bit more live than they're making it seem?
I'm going to talk him up some more, man, because this fight it's such a winnable fight for him. You know, if you go back and look who he's fought, and you say people don't talk him up, but I've been talking him up for a while. I mean, at least his last fight as well, because I had a bet on him against Tim Elliott. And look, if you go look back and look at MMA decisions, I think just over half of the people scored it for Benoit, half of the people scored it for Elliott. It was a tough fight, right? Elliott's a great fighter. I mean, he's still a good fighter in that division. We see him blow away, I think it was Espinoza in his last fight. So he's still competing at that level. Ryan Benoit almost tapped out Tim Elliott in that fight. If Tim Elliott wasn't Tim Elliott, he probably would have tapped out. He had him in a deep, I believe it was a knee bar, some sort of leg lock. You see Tim Elliott screaming out in anger, and he still doesn't tap. You know, if that's Adashev, a kickboxer, and Ryan Benoit latches onto his leg, the guy's tapping out, you know what I mean? Or he's losing his leg. He's not able to get away from it like he did with Tim Elliott. Now, I don't think the fight is going to be contested in the grappling as much as the last fight. Of course, Tim Elliott is a grappler. He's going to force that. I do agree with Clint that if Benoit is smart, he will go for the takedowns here. I can't trust him to go for the takedowns. I just cut off. You guys got me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't trust him to go for the takedowns, but at least that's something in our back pocket, right? It's an MMA fight, so they're going to be striking. If the fighters do fall into the clinch, you know, if someone does get dropped, the fight will go to the grappling. And then I believe we've got a huge edge there. And when I say we, I mean all of us, because we've all got a bet on him. So I think like he's kind of got Adashev covered everywhere. I agree with John as well. Like when you talk about the striking, there's not many fighters that come over from kickboxing and then do really, really well in MMA, man. I mean, you see it sometimes, but there's also like for as many times as you see it go completely the other way. You know, Gokhan Saki, one of the best kickboxers of all time, gets knocked the fuck out by Khalil Roundtree of you know, on the feet. And there's loads of other examples of that. I mean, Adashev looks decent in glory, I guess, but comes over to this game, gets knocked out by Nam, hurt by Madaji. Yeah, he hurt Madaji as well, but I just think Ryan Benoit, like the guy's going to split decisions with Brandon Moreno a long time ago now, beating Sergio Pettis a long time ago now. But Benoit is only 31 years old, right? Adashev is 29 years old. It's not like there's a huge age gap. It's not like Adashev's this new, young, up-and-coming guy, and then Ryan Benoit's on his way out. They're fairly the same age. Ryan Benoit just has way more experience. Ryan Benoit looked good in his last fight. I mean, I don't really see how Ryan Benoit isn't a bigger favorite than he is. I don't see how he's not closer to that minus 200 range. I don't really see too many paths for Adashev other than keeping it on the feet and just outstriking him, which I don't see it happening, man. I mean, look, it could prove me wrong, but I'm all over Ryan Benoit here. He's actually my biggest bet on the card, on a shit card. He is my biggest bet on the card. So, yeah.
Interesting.
I guess I need to add on.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of those fights that I don't feel like I can get a proper read on it personally. Like I feel as though that Adashev could make it a little bit more competitive than some of the takes that I'm seeing out there. The issue though is I do feel like the experience that Benoit has could be the difference maker here. However, his fight IQ is a little bit sketchy at times as well. But you gotta be, you know, a blind mice to not know that you just, you know, if you implement some sort of grappling technique or grappling approach in this fight, you're gonna have a massive advantage in the striking realm. Again, both guys somewhat low IQ. Even Adashev, when he was in that glory kickboxing scene, he wasn't like a crazy knockout artist. He was more so just a point fighter kind of guy, just trying to find these openings and land some good shots. And I think it could translate possibly into this fight. This is the first fight that he's having in the UFC where the guy doesn't completely tower over him, right? Tyson M is a pretty big 125er with some huge bombs in his hands. So I'm going to kind of write that fight off. Sumudarji, very unorthodox striker, long, lanky, a little bit harder for Adashev to close the distance and actually get his strikes off. If I'm not mistaken, it was 50-28 in terms of strikes in favor of Mudarji in that fight. Now he has a guy like Benoit in front of him who he could possibly showcase his striking a little bit better with. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about all this range to cover. And I will say Benoit does have some pretty good power in his hands and his kicks, as he obviously showed when he knocked out Sergio Pettis in that comeback fight. But I do think that Adashev could potentially show some wrinkles in his game here where he goes out there and, puts on a decent striking performance. I will say I like the fact that he's actually training out of Nick Catone's gym as well, which is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated gyms. If I'm not mistaken, that's actually out by John as well over there in New Jersey. But definitely one of those not lower level, but not talked about gyms that will definitely give Adashev some solid work, right? If I'm not mistaken, Frankie Edgar goes by there a couple times. Nick Catone, obviously a very high-level coach in my opinion as well too. So he could definitely be working his overall game, and you got to believe that he wants to shore up his grappling game as best as he can. And I could think of worse places that he can go if he wants to shore it up than Catone's gym over there. So I think we could see a Adashev that that surprises some people. I am going to take him to win this fight via decision. Not the biggest level of confidence either, so I don't hate the fact that you guys actually feel confident enough in terms of taking the shot on Benoit here. But in terms of Adashev, I'm going to take him by decision. And the last thing I'll say about it kind of reminds me of Jinyu Frey against Gloria DePaula, where just, the Jinyu Frey just not having any success in the UFC. Everybody's writing her off, just not saying that she even deserves to be in the UFC. And then she goes out there and pulls off a victory, albeit different stylistic matchups, different variables that we're working with in this spot. So I'm just, picking at straws at this point in time in terms of backing Adashev in this spot. But again, even in my lottery parlays and degenerate parlays, I'm keeping this fight the fuck off of it. I want nothing to do with this on my side because I don't have uber confidence, which you guys seem to have on Benoit in this side. So I'll be completely okay with being wrong in this spot. James, go ahead and then I'll let Clint go after that.
I will just say one thing, right? Because, when you said uber confidence, maybe I come across like really, really confident in Ryan Benoit because I said he's my biggest bet on the card. He's my biggest bet on the card because I have fuck all bets on this card, right? Happens to be the biggest bet. I'm not super confident in Ryan Benoit here. So don't go putting all your money on him, your whole bankroll, right? I just think, it's a decent fight for him to win.
Put your whole bankroll on him.
Clint, what were you going to say, brother?
I was just going to say I have yet to bet this fight. So that's, we're talking about every single fight. We're breaking down every single fight. I'll tell you when I made a bet, when I didn't make a bet. This is the read for this one. I do think Ryan Benoit wins, but I wasn't even confident enough in him to bet him. There were better spots on this shit card until we had those pulled away from me. So now I'm being a degenerate here, and I'm like, I got some free units lying around. Maybe I'll bet Ryan Benoit. So same thing is lucrative, man. Just don't think I'm oozing confidence on Ryan Benoit because to this point, I don't even have money on him yet.
Do the right thing, Clint.
I will.
Draw the devil on your fucking left shoulder.
I will have money on him by fight time after this breakdown, though.
Speaking of a fight that you probably don't want to have money on, we're going to move on to Ashley Yoder against Jinyu Frey in this spot. And, I say that with a little tongue-in-cheek humor there. Very tough fight to break down, in my opinion. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 140 for Yoder, who literally was the last one on the scale and almost didn't even look like she was going to make weight, but she did. She seemed relieved, obviously, to hit that mark. And then in terms of the return here, we got plus 120 on Jinyu Frey. James, I'm actually going to let you kick this one off, brother. How do you feel about this scrap between these two women?
Yeah, man, this was hard to sit through tape for. This was a bit of a struggle, man, but I got it done. And I came away thinking that, like, before, when I saw the line, I saw a plus number next to Jinyu Frey. I'm like, oh, sweet, we're getting an underdog who's fighting Ashley Yoder. Like, maybe this might be a spot I want to target. I come away thinking that the line is probably accurate. Yoder probably should be a slight favorite here. The way I see this fight breaking down stylistically is that Yoder is probably going to have no issue walking forward on Frey because Frey doesn't really hit hard. She's kind of straight hand reliant. She doesn't, she got a couple of leg kicks and she throws a straight hand and she's pretty powerful, but obviously she's fighting upper division. Yoder is a tough chick. We saw her take the kitchen sink off Angela Hill and she never got dropped once. She did look like she potentially might get stopped, but she never got dropped. She is a tough chick. She's a scrappy girl. I don't think Frey's going to be like pounding on her so hard that she's not going to be able to close distance, which means that she will close distance, right? Which is what she wants to do. Spider monkey, grab a hold of you, trap you in a web or whatnot. So I think when she does close distance on Frey, the much, much smaller lady, I think she's going to be able to wrap her up. She might not get a average or conventional takedown, but the grappling probably will ensue by some tussle up against the cage, something like that. And then I believe Yoder will probably be able to get the better of the grappling. I think the line is accurate. So like, I think Yoder's like -150 now. Maybe I'd line her more like a -125. This fight's a bit of a shit show. I will say that I was looking at different ways to play it. The only way I can see any value on this is maybe if you want to take Yoder by sub, you know, it's like +700 or something. And I think the grappling's going to be there quite a bit. And obviously, Jinyu Frey, she doesn't have the best fight IQ from what I can see. In that Kay Hansen fight, she was a little bit, I don't know, she didn't do the best in the grappling, right? Especially when she was on bottom. So Yoder does like to hunt for the sub. She's got them long limbs. She maybe could get a sub, but I mean, I'm literally just clutching at straws right now, right? I don't think there's much value to be had on this fight. I'm going to take Yoder for the scrappy, boring win because she's able to just nullify Frey's game and just crash into the pocket and just win. But yeah, I'm not confident. I'm not confident at all on what's going to happen in this one.
I feel as though we can like listen to 10, 15 different MMA podcasts and everybody's going to have somewhat of a different breakdown of this fight, considering it could go any fucking way, right? Like both women could win in the striking realm. Both women could potentially win in the grappling realm. Yoder, obviously an accredited BJJ black belt, but you don't really see it super threatening. Like she's able to hit reversals and get some top control at times, but she gets reversed herself too. Like she doesn't really do that great of a job in terms of maintaining that top control, which gives me some pause here. Now, obviously she's going to be the bigger woman in this spot. I'm not entirely sure if she'll actually be the stronger woman in this spot, although, you know, like she is the bigger one in terms of height and reach. That won't always translate in terms of the strength. Jinyu Frey, everybody already knows the narrative out there. She's the former atomweight champion from Invicta, 105-pounder, forced to move up to 115 pounds to try to make to compete in the UFC. You know, it's still a travesty in my opinion that they don't have a 105-pound division inside the UFC. I think that Jinyu Frey would be much better suited there, just as other fighters such as Loma Lukbunmi. But in terms of this matchup, if she's not able to get past a girl like Ashley Yoder, I don't think she has much longevity at all inside the UFC, right? Getting that win over Gloria Paula was great and all, but like Ashley Yoder is one of the gatekeepers of gatekeepers, right? Like she for that division specifically, if she's not able to get past a girl like her, it's very, very alarming. I do think though, I think that we'll see Frey actually close distance, land some decent shots, maybe mix in some clinch and some groundwork. I don't think she'll like blow out Ashley Yoder in those sequences, but I do think that her hard-nosed, you know, kind of forward movement and kind of just closing the distance, not really respecting the punching power or the striking at all of Yoder is going to be a concern as well. I will say this, it's not often you see Ashley Yoder, well, actually, then again, it's not often that you see somebody like the level of Lavinia Souza in terms of her striking going out there and, you know, having a lot of success in terms of landing on a girl like Ashley Yoder who had that same type of reach and height advantage that she's going to have in this spot. So I don't mind Frey, you know, as the underdog spot. I don't mind taking a little bit of a poke at her, but just like the Adashev fight for me, this is the two passes of the week for me. I want no action in either of these because it could go either way. If you want to lock of the night, it's the over 2.5 probably, right? I'd be very surprised if we do see a finish. I know James was talking about the potential sub opportunity here. It's possibly there, but I can't remember the last time we've actually seen Yoder, you know, get super, super close to actually getting a finish, right? That's the interesting part here. I know Jinyu Frey got subbed by Kay Hansen in her first UFC fight, so that's a little bit of a concern, but you know, Yoder struggles to truly get those submission opportunities, and I'll be surprised if she actually gets one here against Jinyu Frey. My pick's going to be Frey by decision. If you are looking to bet this fight, I think taking either women by points is the best way to maximize your profitability in this fight, but you might have to call 1-800-GAMBLER if you fucking bet this fight at all. But I am going to be on the Jinyu Frey side here. No bet from my end. Clint, you going to pull out the degenerate in yourself and you got some money on this fight, or how do you see this fight going down? Oh, shit. What is he doing? Oh, God. He's got the tinfoil hat on.
I got the tinfoil hat. No. So I have a strange take on this one. I'm kind of with you, Locke, and It's weird because I swore to myself I was not going to bet this fight, but the closer that we get to fight time, the more confident I get in Jinyu Frey, and I don't know why that is. There should be absolutely no confidence here on either of these fighters, and I understand that in my soul, but for some reason, I'm also just going, man, so the first big narrative that you hear from everybody is Ashley Yoder is so much bigger. Jinyu Frey was an atom weight, man. She's small for the weight class. And then you watch them at the weigh-ins. Yoder wasn't that much bigger than Jinyu Frey. And on top of that, Jinyu Frey is about twice as thick as Ashley Yoder is. There's not going to be a size issue in this fight. Ashley Yoder, she's got the height and reach advantage, but can she stop anybody from closing range? No. No, she can't. Does she stop takedowns? No, she doesn't do that either. And you know what Jinyu Frey does? She bodies people. She pushes them against the cage. She takes them down. She lays on top of them. Ashley Yoder has no problem accepting bottom position and trying to play jiu-jitsu off her back, even though she has yet to submit anybody in the UFC. She falls off her opponents when she gets back control. She has bad positional awareness, and she'll lay on her back and look for triangles the whole fight. Man, I absolutely think that Jinyu Frey is going to win this fight by decision because Ashley Yoder is going to give it to her. And she's the underdog. It just doesn't make sense to me, man. I think that Jinyu Frey is going to win this thing. But like I said, it's sketchy. It's questionable. For all the reasons that everyone else has already laid out, you probably shouldn't be confident at all in this fight. And Ashley Yoder has a chance to win this one. She is the favorite. It makes sense. So I'm probably not going to bet it. It'll go in one of my Hail Mary parlays. But yeah, I think Jinyu Frey is the side here if you're going to do anything with it.
Nothing makes me happier, and I'm guilty of this too, is when a predictor or a capper or whoever the hell starts their breakdown by saying, I said I wasn't going to bet this fight, but I fucking love that because I do the same thing as well. John, how do you feel about this fight? Again, it's pretty close in my opinion.
Well,
how do you think it goes down?
I am very confident, and that confidence is that the line is right and that there's no value on either side here. I'll be honest, I'm kind of bummed about it because like when this fight got announced, it was one that I was like, okay, Frey is coming off a win where literally everybody and their mother bet Gloria to Paula, and Yoder's coming off a loss where she looked really bad. Like, decent chance, we'll get you. Me too. but most people were on Gloria to Paula. But I was like, there's Yoder's definitely gonna be a dog. Unfortunately, she's not, and like, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I feel kind of similar to this fight that I do about Adashev and Benoit. The difference is, and this is a huge difference that I think a lot of people don't give enough credence to when breaking down a fight, is you look at Adashev Benoit, and I think it's kind of a similar dynamic to what minutes will look like in this fight, except Benoit's got pretty substantial finishing upside, in addition to an ability to win minutes, whereas Yoder she could catch her in a sub, but she doesn't really have any knockout upside at all here unless it's some kind of a positional KO. And so like it's a huge thing having somebody that you think is going to edge minutes but also has a lot of ability to finish in a closely lined fight and somebody who you think is going to edge minutes but probably can't finish. So I just don't see the value on Yoder, but I do think like, again, almost the same dynamic. Yoder's fought much better competition. It reminds me to some extent when she was a dog against Miranda Granger like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whenever it was. It just like, people kind of like, oh, Miranda Granger, she's like a hot, sexy prospect here. We should probably bet her, even though Yoder's got a lot more fights and a lot more experience. And Yoder won that fight fairly easily. I kind of feel similarly here. She's a longer fighter. She's a bit taller. Her output's a bit better than Frey. Like, I think Frey is pretty skilled, but the reality is she doesn't do a whole lot. Like, even looking at the DePaula fight, round two of that, she dominates her on the mat in round one after landing one takedown. Round two, she basically goes back to doing Jinyu Frey things and just kind of loses a tepid striking round there. And we see that every time she's on the feet. Like, I think technically she's fine standing, but she's always getting outworked by her opponents. And it's like, you can be better than your opponents, but if you're getting outstruck 2-1, it doesn't really matter. You're going to lose the round on the cards. And so I think Yoder should basically have the advantages everywhere. Even if she gets taken down, Yoder scrambles pretty well. I'd be a little surprised if she just gets held on her back for like 4 minutes like DePaula did. So I think Yoder wins the fight. But like I said, I think the line's about right. That 55-60% range for Yoder, I think that's accurate.
Yeah, it's again very, very tough fight to break down and truly be confident on either side of the spot. It could go either freaking way. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Another fight very closely lined, but I'm very intrigued to hear everybody's thoughts on it. We got Danny Chavez plus 100, minus 120 is the return on Kai Kamaka. Both guys looked in decent shape. Kai Kamaka obviously taking this fight on short notice. I believe he is stepping in for Doo-Ho Choi. That fight would have been absolutely bonkers if Choi actually made the walk. But here we are with Kai Kamaka, who equally does provide some very entertaining fights as well. I do lean on the Danny Chavez side in this fight. I do think that he could potentially land the more significant strikes. I love his calf kicking approach, which is something that MMA Masters goes out there and pretty much tries to instill into all of their fighters. You know what I mean? That's an approach that definitely like opens up the rest of their game. I felt as though, I felt as though Kamaka initially when he came into the UFC, that Tony Kelly fight, absolutely crazy. I thought he had some pretty solid potential, but then I saw, his knack for sometimes slowing down later in fights. It's a little bit of a concern, especially when you're dealing with guys that are going to be able to keep up that pace from minute 1 to minute 15. Danny Chavez, I feel like the jury is still out in regards to his cardio, but I feel as though he's at least a little bit more efficient in terms of how he goes out there and takes his striking approach. Again, starts off with light kicks, starts mixing it in the hands. I do think he's live to potentially go out there and land some takedowns in this fight as well and potentially win some rounds. Kai Kamaka seems like a decent striker, right? Good technical abilities, good combinations. Doesn't seem to have the most power on his shots. Other than, you can ask TJ Brown, who definitely was planted on his butt a couple of times. But I don't even know if Kai Kamaka has had a finish in the last several years now. I'll quickly look it up for you guys right now. But it's been a long time since, given his style, which is a striking, heavy style, good combinations and all that, I'm surprised he doesn't have more wins by finish. And yeah, just glossing over his record right now, none by knockout, which is absolutely crazy considering his style here. But I do like Chavez. I do think he is growing at a decent rate. The last fight was just a horrible stylistic matchup for him. It's very hard for him to go out there and, get his game going when you have a guy like Jared Gordon in your face the entire time, pushing you back, landing takedowns. Obviously, that was a big part of that matchup as well. But I don't think that's going to be Kai Kamaka's thing, right? Kai Kamaka is okay to sit at distance and kind of just distance strike with you. And I don't think that's a great way to approach a fight here with Danny Chavez. So yeah, I like the Chavez side here. I don't mind him, especially with the plus money that seems to be coming in, or that he's going to be sitting at come fight time. It seems like there's some Kamaka money coming in. But yeah, I do like Chavez. I don't know if he gets the finish. I'd consider the round 3 plus 14.25, but I just need a little bit more evidence from the Chavez side of things in terms of knowing that he has legitimate cardio too, because I felt as though he did have some cardio issues in that TJ Brown fight where he just completely let that third round go. So that's a little bit of a concern here. And then obviously you're going to have cardio issues when you're fighting a Energizer Bunny like Jared Gordon. Let's see how these guys now match up against each other in this spot. But I do like Chavez. Going to take him by decision. Again, not a huge read there, but I do still feel as though he should be the slight favorite in the spot, and he should get it done as well by decision. Clint, how do you feel about this matchup between two primary strikers?
I think you broke it down pretty damn well, man. I'm with you on the Chavez side of things. I pulled the trigger at plus 105. I got 1 unit on Danny Chavez. Chavez is one of my, I don't know, he's one of these guys that's like mid to low tier. For some reason, I'm absolutely in love with him, and I keep on trying to make it happen. I like his game. I like the way he attacks the leg. I like the way he crowds his opponents. I like the heavy hands that he's got throwing in there. I think Chavez is a very underrated striker, and I think this is a good opportunity for him against a guy that fades. That's a big thing for me, is the gas tank. Kai Kamaka is going to have a size advantage. He's going to have a grappling advantage, but is he going to use it? Is he going to use it the right way? I took Chavez against Jared Gordon last time out because I think Gordon is a dead man walking when he fights power strikers, and he came in heavy. This is one of those weigh-in spots where he stopped cutting weight too early, kept a little bit of gas in the tank for himself, and that really showed up on fight night. He was massive in there that night. I don't think Kai Kamaka is going to do that. He's got a little size advantage, not an extra half weight class size advantage. So if Kai Kamaka can't control this guy, he's going to get his leg beaten to hell. If they throw down on the feet, I trust the durability of Chavez. You're not taking that guy out of the cage if we're going strike for strike here, in my opinion. And I think this is a round 3 sprinkle opportunity. I think there's a shot that Kai Kamaka gasses out, slows down, and then we get Danny Chavez really shining, trying not to let another fight go to the judges, and get a big UFC win here on Saturday. I like Chavez. Going to sprinkle round 3. I hope he knocks him out.
John, I'm not 100% sure if you were on Brown as well last time when Brown fought Kai Kamaka, but I was happy to cast that underdog ticket in a very controversial decision, so I'm not going to be complaining too much there. What do you think that we've seen from both of these guys in their first 2 fights in the UFC, and how they ultimately match up with each other come tomorrow night?
So to be completely honest with the Brown, I had no money on Brown Kamaka, but like my view at the end of the fight was I scored it Kamaka 30-27, but I also was like, I could see 29-28 for Brown. Like, one of those things where I personally thought Kamaka won every round, but there were, it was a reasonable case for Brown winning 2 rounds. But so first of all, before I get into the analysis, like this fight kind of displays like full on display, the kind of recency bias you see when it comes to like the MMA betting markets. So like you had Danny Chavez that closed -150 against Jared Gordon. Like, I get it, Jared Gordon's chinny, but Jared Gordon is really fucking good. Like, I blasted him in that spot, and it's like the guys who don't, like, he's fought like the best in the world. Those are the guys who have beaten him. The guys that don't, he drowns them. Like, his pace is insane. He's an excellent grappler. He'd be -300 or better against literally every guy that Gordon and Kamaka have beaten in their careers. That's just the reality. And so I don't want to say toss the Jared Gordon fight out completely, but it's like, Jared Gordon, when you're taping this fight, he's a completely another level than anybody else you're seeing when you're taping these fights on either side, in my opinion, anyway. And so going past that, I am not really a Kai Kamaka guy. Like, look, I like the output. I'm a sucker for stats. I do like the output he puts out there, but he's got some cardio issues. I know he has allegedly a wrestling base, but like, I don't think he's much better than a C+ wrestler. I'd call him more of a willing wrestler than a good wrestler, which isn't a bad thing. If you're doing things, you're generally looking good to the judges. But he's not a guy who's going to come out here, put you on the mat, and drown you for 15 minutes there. On top of which, you have Chavez, who he faced 13 takedowns against Gordon and Brown, both of whom are quite good wrestlers, and they went 2 for 13 total. And the 2 takedowns were both Gordon, and they both came late when Chavez was pretty tired in that fight. Which is to say, I think this is going to be a striking fight. And like you look at Kamaka's career, yeah, he has an output edge, but we've seen them both fight TJ Brown. TJ Brown outpaced Kamaka relatively easily, whereas Chavez outlanded him at distance there and beat him up pretty bad, was landing much more power shots. And I'm not saying 1 + 1 necessarily equals 2 in this situation, but we've seen one of them was able to deal with Brown on the feet pretty easy, while the other one, while Kamaka hurt him, Kamaka was getting landed on quite a bit in that fight. And so it comes down to me to, look, I don't think Chavez necessarily has a big cardio edge, but I think he does a lot more attritional work than Kamaka does. Like, a lot of leg kicks, a lot more power shots that are going to wear him down over the course of the fight. I think standing, it's a competitive fight. I don't think Kamaka is likely to have a ton of wrestling success in this fight. Maybe he can land a takedown, maybe 2 if he's lucky. I doubt he gets significant control time, but I think it's going to be pretty close on minutes here. But again, come back to finishing upside. I do think Chavez hits a lot harder. I think when you're talking about finishing ability, like you said, Locke, Kamaka's got no KOs in his career. It's not an accident, and you go back to like his fights with like Brian Stack in his last fight in LFA, and he was fading bad in that fight. And like Stack's, like, he's a nice regional fighter, but I don't think he's someone who's likely to ever make the UFC. And he's winning striking exchanges late in that fight and made that a really close fight. Chavez is on a different level than that. I think it's a close fight. I think Chavez is better finishing upside. I took 2 units on him at +110 here. Like I said, I think he does more interesting things than Kamaka does. He could get paced. That's definitely in play. But I just kind of think he's the better fighter and the more well-rounded fighter, to be honest.
James, I had a pretty high ceiling for Kamaka, especially after that fight against Tony Kelly, but it seems to have completely dissipated, especially over his last couple of fights. Did you have a similar feel for Kai when he made his UFC debut, or were you always thinking that he was at the level that he's currently at? And then ultimately, who do you think ends up winning this fight?
Yeah, not really, to be honest. I mean, it was a great fight. It was real entertaining, but I didn't, expect the guy to go on to do like amazing things. Like, to me, it was just more of an entertaining fight that was like fan friendly than anything specifically that his skill set was going to be super good. But I don't hate Kamaka. Look, with this fight, man, I feel like, look, it's a real close fight again. If you sat me down and, just convince me either side, I could probably be convinced that either fighter should be -125, right? If you like sat me down and just said your case, right? If someone else was giving the case for Kamaka, I would probably be leaning Kamaka as opposed to Chavez, like John and Clint are on. But there's a few interesting things that come up on you guys' breakdowns when you was talking. One of them was, look, I don't think Kamaka can have that much wrestling success, like you said, because obviously we've seen him defend takedowns from Gooden, who's a good wrestler. We've seen him defend all the takedowns from TJ Brown. I do think, though, that Kamaka has slightly better cardio than Chavez. So I do think if it gets to the third round and, you know, let's say it's 1-1 in the third round, I do think Kamaka could potentially lean on the wrestling and win that third round, whether he has 4 minutes of control time or whether he just takes him down two times and he ends up winning the third round. So I do think the third round leans more to Kamaka. And another thing I will say is about that TJ Brown Chavez fight, right? Because that's a common opponent, right? So anytime you're studying tape, if both fighters that are fighting each other have a common opponent, always go and watch them fights, right? Because you can always take a lot more than you can out of them fights than a lot of other fights, right? Anyone who watches tape, that's a known thing. And I will say, though, because John was saying that Chavez basically just beat the fuck out of TJ Brown, and then TJ Brown versus Kamaka was a close fight. But I kind of think a lot of that was predicated on the low calf kicks, right? That kind of took away TJ's game real early. And TJ never really recovered from that until the third round, where he actually won that third round pretty handily because Chavez slowed down. So I do think the first 2 rounds in that fight were a little bit different than the Kamaka fight because he kind of just took away his base early and he wasn't really able to get going. Now, look, he still did that, right? So you can't just say like it was because of that and to throw it out because he still made that damage himself. But I think it's a close fight. Basically, to round it off, I think, Kamaka could potentially throw more volume, but then I think Chavez is going to hit harder, especially with the boxing in the pocket. Anytime they do crash distance, Chavez throws really heavy in the pocket. And if he does land, he potentially could drop Kamaka, he could hurt him. So the finishing, the big moment upside is on Chavez, but then maybe the third round wrestling volume side is on Kamaka. So it's a really close fight, man. If you want a better plus money play, fair enough. But to me, I would need more plus 130, plus 150 range to bet either side in this fight. So it's a skip for me. It's probably going to go to decision, but because I think it's going to be a real exciting fight, I never really like to bet them fights to go to decision. And also it's juice, minus 200 or something. So, yeah, man, I'm going to say it's a 50-50 fight again. I'll go with Kamaka because I do think he is probably going to win the third round. So I'll say Kamaka wins, but it's a close fight, man.
It's very demoralizing for me as a host to put together a show like this and have 3 straight fights where all of us are pretty much like, man, it's fucking close fight, just pass on it. But I completely understand. You guys are on the hitting the nail on the head here. It's absolutely true. All of these fights are very close and could potentially go both ways. But a fight that probably won't look that close. And I know there's going to be some polarizing opinions on this one. Can't wait to get to it. We got Chris Gruetzemacher going up against Rafa Garcia. We got minus. I was waiting for that chuckle from John here. We got minus 290 now for Rafa Garcia, plus 260 on Mr. Chris Gruetzemacher. And I'm actually going to let Clint kick this one off for us. How do you feel about this matchup? And what did you think about the weigh-ins? It didn't seem like there was anything too noticeable from either guy, right?
Man, so I'll start off by saying I laid the hammer down. I did do 5 units to win 2 at minus 250 here on my guy Rafa Garcia. I don't like Gruetzemacher, and I know that it's going to get real interesting when my boy Fox takes over for this breakdown here. But realistically, I think that there's not a lot of times that you can proclaim an MMA fighter medically deceased. Time of death for Chris Gruetzemacher was when Alexander Hernandez touched him on the chin. I think it's over, man. I think he's washed, and I don't normally take this angle. I'm usually the guy that's like, no. But this guy's taken so many long breaks from the game. The game has passed him by. It was passed him by the last time he had a run in the UFC, and he was lucky enough to catch Joe Lozon, who's damaged goods at this point, and get put away there. I don't think that he should be a favorite over, really even live against any competitive fighter in the top 20 right now at this stage of his career. He's worn, he's shot, he's tired, and that's what I saw at the weigh-ins, man. I already had the bet in, so this wasn't like a post-weigh-in read like I do, but he looked exhausted on the scale, and I mean like dead eyes. Like he looked checked out. His body looked soft. Chris Gruetzemacher is usually a very well-muscled guy. He's usually jacked up when he gets in here, and he looked a little more flabby than he usually does on the scales today. I just think he's got one foot in the grave. I don't think Chris Gruetzemacher is here for it anymore, And we've seen Rafa Garcia, everyone counted him out in his last fight, in his UFC debut. That's all anybody's been talking about this week, is how he shocked everyone, how good he looked in his debut. And that's his worst, that's his least positive discipline, is the striking, right? This guy's a grappler. So the fact that he was able to do what he did on the feet because he couldn't get the grappling going, that just shows like how good do you think he is on the mat? He's way better than people expect down there. And he's going against a fighter here that doesn't have a good track record when he gets taken down. So I just feel like the pieces fall into place here. And not only that, this man moved out to work with Justin Gaethje and Trevor Whitman, the best brain in the MMA game today, Trevor Whitman. And if he had serviceable striking, what do you think training with a guy like Gaethje is going to do for this kid on the feet? Like, he's just getting better. He's the right age to be improving. He had a real steep first fight in the UFC. This is beyond a step down in competition. I think he's the rightful favorite. And I really think he just walks through Gruetzemacher, and then we see Gruetzemacher lay his gloves down at the end of the fight and retire after this one, because I just don't think he's long for this fight game anymore.
Just based off of Clint's breakdown alone, you guys could probably tell which side John is on the spot. And before I actually pass on over to him to actually break it down, he's like literally the only guy on Bet MMA Tips that it seems is on Chris Gruetzemacher putting his money
literally.
where his mouth is. So, John, break it down. Why do you favor Chris Gruetzemacher in this spot, and why do you think he wins?
So I did not lay the hammer down on Chris Gruetzemacher. let me just say that. But I do like him here. I guess, just to give you an idea of what my general feelings are on Rafa Garcia, in his last fight in Combate, I bet Humberto Bandenay against him. And I'd consider Humberto Bandenay to be like one of the worst men's fighters to come through the UFC in quite some time. I'm not saying Garcia is absolutely horrible. I just don't really see a whole lot that he does well, in my opinion. Like, he fought better than I expected against Nasrat, but there's like degrees of better, right? Like, he lost the fight very cleanly. He threw a ton of strikes, but he only landed 22% of them, while Nasrat pretty much hit him at will. Couldn't take him down. And look, Nasrat's got for a good first layer takedown defense, but Nasrat can be taken down if you can chain takedowns, which you can't. And look, like, I know Gruetzemacher's been subbed, but like, look at the two guys that subbed him, Chaz Skelly and Davi Ramos. Like, he went 12 minutes with Ramos before he got subbed, and was basically on his way to and started to take over that fight before, Ramos kind of caught him back and subbed him there. I don't think you're seeing a level of jiu-jitsu or submission grappling from Garcia that's anywhere near what he saw there. I mean, if you look at the fight with Lauzon, like, look, I get it. Joe is pretty washed at this point, but Joe really couldn't get him down or put him in any compromising positions, and I would put Garcia's grappling personally at about that level. And so if I don't think Garcia can dominate the grappling, and I really don't think he can here, I'd be surprised if Garcia was to get like substantial control time and or submit him. I just don't really rate his submission grappling at all. Like, beating a bunch of like guys who aren't very good in jiu-jitsu and Combate doesn't really tell me a whole lot. It's like Manny Bermudez subbed a million guys who were like 0-1 before he came to the UFC and got the Bermudez Triangle nickname. So it's like, you're going to tell me on the feet. Like, I'm not saying Grits is better on the feet, but, his metrics check out. He's a guy who's going to go forward and throw a ton of output. And like, that kind of guy is easy to deal with if you have the tools to deal with. Can you teep? Can you jab and move? Can you do stuff like that? Do you have like a solid clinch game? But I haven't seen really anything from Garcia to make me think he has those tools. Now, he may have those tools because he hasn't really faced that kind of archetype, that kind of fighter who's going to bite the mouthpiece, go forward, look to force the clinch, and just force like a heavy brawl type fight. But again, I haven't really seen him display that yet. And so like, my general philosophy of betting fights is, don't make an assumption that someone has something you haven't seen. It's much safer to assume they don't have it. And, on the other side of it, it's like, look, I agree with Clint. Like, that KO from Alex Hernandez was fucking brutal. It was tough to watch, and he may well be done here. But like we just talked about with Kai Kamaka, Rafa Garcia's got one KO in his career. And what I have learned over the years is KOs on the regional scene aren't predictive of how much power you'll generally carry in the UFC, but a lack of KOs is very predictive of you not knocking out many guys when you get to the UFC. Very few guys have. What was that?
Trevin Jones says, "Shut up, John."
Yeah, Trevin Jones. You are right. He's the
only one. Like the only one.
Yeah,
he's the only one.
And so it's like, if Garcia does knock him out and he's shot, fine. And I would favor Garcia. And I do favor him in this spot just because Grits is old. He's never been the most skilled guy in the world to begin with. But like, if he doesn't get finished, I don't really see a way it's not a close fight down the stretch, and we don't have a close fight at a decision. And so, like, personally, I put Garcia at about 60%, which, you know, you could make an argument that if I'm putting him there, I should have more on Gruetzemacher, and I'm kind of waiting, and if it goes to plus 300, I might add to it. Like I said, it's not super confident, but I would pretty much favor every guy, including Joe Lauzon's corpse, that in Gritz's last 4 fights against Rafa Garcia. That's just my own personal opinion. Maybe I'll look, you know, very wrong in hindsight, but I think long term this is a decent spot. You take a guy who's fought way better competition, you know, in a spot where he looks bad against another guy who really hasn't beaten anything. He beat Esteban. The only other two UFC guys he's beaten are Humberto Bandana and Esteban Payan, who are like a combined 1-8 in the UFC. And so we'll see, but I like Gritz here.
I like it. It's you don't have to make that deep of a case, especially for somebody that's a plus 250. So if you see a bit of an edge, I completely get it, and I love the approach that you're taking for this, James. You gonna side with John here in terms of picking the rickety old Chris Gruetzemacher, or do you think that Rafa has the goods to go out there and put him away?
I can't pick Chris, man. I can't pick Chris in 2021. You know, like, I think the guy might be done, and it's always hard to play that game, right? Is he done? Does he still have another fight left? A lot of times you think he's done and he's got another fight left. To be honest, even last week, Darren Elkins, I kind of think Darren Elkins is a skeleton, right? Is a shell of himself. He was still able to weather the storm and defeat Derek Minner. Now, I didn't back Derek Minner, especially not a chalk. I backed the under, right? So I kind of packaged that in. But it's always hard to, like, say, is he done or not? But in that Alexander Hernandez fight, I know it was an early stoppage. I'm like, early stoppage as in 2 minutes into the fight, not an early stoppage. That was definitely not an early stoppage.
You want to see somebody die in there, James?
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, it was early, right? 2 minutes, but he didn't look good in that fight. And I know Alex is like in and out, darting movements. He's a young guy. He's quite fast. He can make you look stupid. I just didn't like what I saw, right? It is what it is. I didn't like the way he was reacting to even the first shot he took out. I just didn't like, you know, his game in there. Rafa Garcia doesn't bring that, right? He doesn't bring that fast pace, that in and out, energetic movement. He's more meat and potatoes. He'll walk in the middle. Yeah, he'll try grapple. He'll throw big hooks and stuff like that. I kind of feel like that it's a very bad matchup for Chris Gruetzemacher, though, because, like, I just don't see too many paths of victory for Chris. Like, let's say it does go to decision. Let's say he doesn't knock him out, which is definitely possible because Chris has been knocked out or finished in every single one of his losses. Now, they are against decent fighters, but I think he even got one loss early on. Like, he likes to be finished when he gets beat. But if he doesn't knock him out, right, the line is a pick 'em, like minus 110 apiece, whether it goes to decision or not, right? Which tells you what the bookmakers think of it, because Rafa Garcia, massive favorite. A lot of people picking him to finish, but the line is just, you know, pick him to go to decision. Chris isn't easy to stop. Like, he's a tough guy, right? Although in his last fight, he didn't show that. But if it does go to decision, I don't see Chris out-voluming Rafa Garcia. I don't see him hurting Rafa Garcia. So I don't really see him outpacing at all Rafa Garcia. I think Garcia has very, very good cardio. So I just don't really see too many avenues for Chris to win this fight. Even if it does end up being a close fight like John says, I feel like it's a close fight that he's never really going to win. You know, I just think Rafa Garcia, he's going to keep the pace. He's going to throw loads of strikes. He ain't going to get tired. Now, to John's point, if he bites down on the mouthpiece, puts him up against the cage, maybe he's going to start to get tired then. You know, haven't really seen anything from tape where someone's done that to Rafa. But Rafa's a brick of a guy himself. You know, he's a big, tough, like a small, stocky, tough dude. I don't see Chris really pushing him up against the cage, you know, fighting like that. So I'm finding it real hard to find a way Chris wins the fight. But I'm not laying minus 330 or whatever it is on Rafa Garcia. If he was minus 250, I potentially might lay that, you know, but I didn't do the tape when that happened. I probably put him around 70 to 75%. Yeah, I probably put him about 75% at minus 300 or something like that. So I think the line's fairly accurate, but I'm going with Garcia to win. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pretty much start off my breakdown by saying, yeah, I'm picking Garcia to win this fight too. I do think that he can definitely go out there and get the finish, but I will give some more credence to Gruetzemacher, which I do think that, John was definitely on the nail in terms of saying that he does have a better shot than what the odds are actually indicating. Now, I know a lot of the people out there that are taking Garcia in the spot, the consensus seems to be that he's going to be able to get Gruetzemacher out of there in the first round. Now, if that doesn't happen, that's where my question mark lays, right? Like if he goes out there and doesn't get that first round knockout or that first transmission, whatever it might be, we've seen him kind of slow down later in fights, and albeit, against lower level of competition, so he's able to actually go out there and still get the win, even if he gets pushed later into rounds. But it's just not a good look to me. And again, Gruetzemacher is probably that level as well too. But what I like to compare him to is the poor man's Darren Elkins, which is not the greatest compliment either, right? Because you already know that Darren Elkins is where he is. But I feel as though
this Elkins slander, I will not stand for it.
Sorry, I catched with him last week as well too.
Leave the legend alone.
Exactly. But no, I think that if he does survive that first round, now he could potentially put it on Garcia too. And the fact that a lot of people want to look at the Nasrat fight and be like, look, this guy went 15 minutes with this guy and he survived it. But there's two completely different game plans that you're going to be getting from Nasrat compared to Gruetzemacher, right? From Nasrat, we saw a Matador type of style where he was just letting Garcia come to him, waiting for his opportunities to pop. Then he would land the better strikes there and get the decision based on that. What Chris is going to do, at least in my opinion, is kind of push the fight to him. Put it on him, like push him up against the cage, or try to outmuscle him. Will he? Maybe not. But I think that he'll start to wear on him in that aspect and could potentially make it a lot dirtier and grindier of a fight than Garcia is actually used to. That's my concern. I've seen Garcia fade in the past, although his only loss was his last fight, so he's been still able to pull off wins even when he's fading. It is a bit of a concern, especially when he starts to go further into his UFC career. I'm not going to make it too long-winded. Both these guys, or all three of these guys, have pretty much hit the nail on the head in how this fight should go down. I do pick Garcia, and I do actually have a bet on this. It's actually my dog of the night play. I like the under 2.5 in this spot, plus 100. I do think obviously there is a high upside for Garcia to get that finish early here, or if this fight does get pushed later on, I'm not completely ruling out the potential that Gruetzemacher could just overwhelm Garcia the later that this fight goes and just put on his best Darren Elkins impression to get the victory here. But I do think Garcia finds the chin eventually and puts him out there. Gruetzemacher just does not seem like he's taking shots well at all, and Garcia, albeit very limited in his striking arsenal, throws everything into his fucking punches. And if he can catch a slow and plodding Chris Gruetzemacher, I don't think it's going to be a long night for Gruetzemacher in this spot. So yeah, I like Garcia. Am I laying the minus 330 or not? Definitely not. I'd rather take the under 2.5 and, just kind of hope that he goes up there and gets that knockout. I will say there were some crazy lines for the knockout, which I think was like plus 400 or something like that. Round one plus 500 or something like that. Like there are certain spots that you could definitely extract some more value out of it. But we gotta make sure that Garcia will actually be able to get him out of there. Last thing I'll say about this fight, I'll always come back to this, especially for matchups like this. Shout out to my guy AJ Sholo. Do not put too much stock into the standing KO, because if it doesn't transpire, how does the rest of the fight go down? I feel like Garcia might still have him covered, but like a perfect example is the Sumadarji versus Adashev fight. Everybody's like, Su is going to go out there and starch him in the first round. He doesn't. Luckily enough, Mudarji is still good enough to go out there and get the decision victory. Can Garcia do that here against a tough Gruetzemacher? Maybe. But I'm going to go Gruetzemacher or Garcia first round knockout. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got the prelim headliner between Colin Anglin and Melsik Baghdasaryan. My pick for sleeper of the night, for a potential fight of the night spot. I think it's going to be absolutely bananas in terms of odds. We're looking at minus 145 for Melsik and plus 125 for Colin Anglin. And John, I'm actually going to get you to kick this one off for us, brother. How do you feel about this matchup?
Well, first of all, I mean, it tells you all you know about this card that this is the prelim headliner.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Dude, it was Nico Montano Wu Yanan before. That was the prelim headliner.
But like, I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. Like, you couldn't pay me really to bet this fight with two guys coming off contenders, both of which have different questions. On the Anglin side, I really don't think Anglin is that skilled, to be honest. I do appreciate his willingness to wrestle, how often he tries to wrestle, but also, he's wrestled a bunch of guys that are really bad, non-contenders. He basically kind of just Homer Simpsoned his way into his opponent being exhausted and winning that fight. It's just kind of a style that, I touched on it on my podcast the other night, but I think it's kind of a style that there are some guys in the UFC who have the durability to kind of excel at long term, like guys like Justin Gaethje and whatnot. Guys who are just, stupid durable, who can take punishment and just kind of wear guys down like that. But I think most guys cannot, which isn't it. Maybe he is one of those guys. I don't really know. But in terms of skill, I don't really see it for Anglin. Like, he's a willing wrestler, but I don't think he's very good, at least not yet. I don't think he's a great grappler. Like, I don't think his top game is anything to write home about. But on the other side, you have Baghdasaryan, who it's kind of funny because I think the inverse I feel about him, whereas I look at Melsik and I'm like, this guy seems like he's really fucking skilled. Like, I see his striking. I'm like, man, it's clean as fuck. He clearly hits hard. But also, he fought a bunch of nobodies, to get to Contender Series. I think, what do you have, like 4 straight wins inside 30 seconds or inside a minute? Something crazy like that. And then he goes on Contenders. He fights Dennis Bazooka, who, shout out Long Island guy. But, Bazooka is not even close to a UFC caliber fighter. And, obviously Melsik looked great early in that fight. But you saw once it started creeping up to the 7-8 minute mark, that gas tank started to wane, and suddenly that became a close fight. If I recall correctly, I think it was 29-28. And so it's weird because on the one hand, I think the upside for Melsik is considerably higher long-term than it is for Colin Anglin. But on the other hand, there is a lot of unknowns for Melsik's game. I think the very, very small sample we have of Melsik's grappling seems okay. But again, it's gonna face stiffer and stiffer competition the higher he goes, and so that's a question mark. His cardio is a big question mark, and so you have this weird kind of Frankenstein fight where you have one guy who's not that skilled but seems very durable, but debuting in the UFC, against a guy who seems very skilled but seems kind of gassy, also making his debut in the UFC, and it's like something's got to give here. Which is it going to be? I don't know. I guess you could make a case for Anglin as a dog. But for me, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm very confident that Melsik has skills, whereas I'm not so confident in Anglin. So I don't really want to make a play. I'm kind of hoping this gets extended and goes 15 just so we get some data either way. But yeah, I mean, it'll be a fun fight for sure.
I definitely think it could potentially steal the fight of the night honors for sure. James, how do you feel about this matchup between two solid strikers, in my opinion?
Yeah, I mean, look, man, again, we come to a place where it's hard to kind of give a full breakdown, because we don't know much about Melsik, right? Obviously, Anglin, we've got quite a decent amount of tape, right? But with Melsik, he's been 15 minutes one fucking time. You know what I mean? Like, how I see people confident on Melsik, like, yeah, he's going to blow Anglin away. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. Like, we've seen the guy go 15 minutes once, and that was the only decent fighter he fought. He couldn't finish him in 5 seconds like he did every other fighter, right? And he lost the second round. Now, I will say he got a second win in the third round, kind of like Pulaheni Soriano last week, which is always good to see, right? So he didn't completely fall apart when that early KO didn't come. So you would expect that he's not going to completely fall apart if the early KO doesn't come. But also, I think, in this matchup, Colin Anglin, if he isn't dead within 30 seconds or 5 minutes, I think he's going to be pushing way harder than Bazooka was, right? I think he's probably a better fighter, and he's definitely more experienced, and he definitely has better pace and pressure going into the later rounds. And to be honest, that's kind of an archetype you want against someone like Melsik Baghdasaryan, right? You want someone who looks durable, at least he looks durable, and then he comes on strong later, that fight goes, and he proactively wrestles constantly. If you was like, to me, build someone to fight Melsik Baghdasaryan, I'll build someone like Colin Anglin, but just way better than Colin Anglin, right? So, look, I feel like Melsik's probably got a very good chance of stopping this guy in round one. But if he doesn't stop him in round one and he starts to get tired like he did in his last fight, I think Colin Anglin's going to make him even more tired than he was in his last fight. And I think Colin Anglin could even get him out of there late, man. I really do. So, yeah, we've seen Melsik go 15 minutes once. I'm not going to fucking say too much about this fight. I'm going to go with Colin Anglin. Fuck it. Round 3 finish, plus 2,000, ship it, bankroll on it, and then, send me some money to say thanks.
I love the confidence in that spot. But you're right in terms of the but the main thing here is the fact that the amount of data that we have out there on Melsik is just not enough to formulate a legitimate breakdown of this fight, right? Like you can either say Baghdasaryan is going to go out there and knock him out in the first round, or in the second and third round, we just don't truly know how it's going to go down, right? Like I wasn't completely let down with the fact that Melsik was able to kind of keep it together in rounds 2 and 3 against a guy like Bazookia, but is Anglin going to kind of approach it in the same way? To me, it looked like Bazookia was almost intimidated by the amount of power and striking that was coming his way even later in those rounds, right? Like even though it wasn't coming at him with the ferocity and the speed and the freshness as it was in the first round, it was still doing some decent work in the second and third round to at least nullify what was coming back his way from Bazookia. He could potentially do the same thing here against Anglin. Like I think that he could put some power and hurting on Anglin, and Anglin might be a little bit too intimidated to let his own striking go in the second and third rounds, and he could just piss away this fight by just waiting too long for his opportunity. And then Melsik is the one actually putting it, not volume per se, but at least putting activity together, being the one that's kind of moving forward. And I like the fact that even in that Bazookia fight that it looked like he was slightly slowing down. He didn't really let his foot off the gas in the sense that he was actually still moving forward and still throwing strikes and still trying to impose as well in that spot. I think he could do the same thing here against Anglin, right? I do think that he could go out there and put that kind of pressure and that type of striking style on Anglin. But we just need more data to go out there and be truly confident in it. Am I confident to this point to bet it at -145? No, it's just due to the lack of data. Give me more data. Let's give him 2 more fights. I hope these fights go 15 minutes so that we can extract a little bit more from Baghdasaryan and see if he can go out there and actually give us an efficient and effective 15 minutes rather than just that one fight against Dennis Bazookia, who probably isn't even UFC level at this point, right? So that's something that we need to worry about as well. James, you're going to add something to this?
No.
Oh, okay.
I will now. You said it. I think that Melsik in round 1 is a hugely live possibility. So don't. Yes, if you do put your bankroll on it, don't be starting DMing me if he does get knocked out in round 1, because that's definitely possible. I don't think Anglin's very good.
Yeah, exactly. My ultimate prediction for this matchup is going to be Baghdasaryan by round 1 KO. I do think that he'll be able to find the shots here. I think he's just a nice, tight, crisp, combination striker with a lot of power on his shots, obviously. Whereas Anglin looks a little bit more loose and kind of free flowy with his striking style, and I think that's going to be kind of to his detriment here, especially once he starts to eat the counter shots of Baghdasaryan. But I do like Baghdasaryan in this spot. I think he gets the first round knockout. But if it does get extended past that first round, I'd like to see what other fighters will do against a guy like Baghdasaryan, especially if they don't get intimidated by the power that's going to be coming back his way. So, yeah, I like Baghdasaryan here. Not much confidence because of the lack of data, but I do think that he can get the KO. Round 1, take a little bit of a sprinkle on that. I think it's worth the shot. But outside of that, hard to really plant your flag on this fight just due to, we need to see more of Melsik. Clint, how do you feel about this matchup? Do you see an edge on either side here?
I mean, you guys absolutely broke the hell down out of this fight. There's not a whole lot left for me to say. I got to tell you, though, I love the way Lucrative said that if he was going to build someone, it would be Colin Anglin, just a whole lot better. You couldn't have said it any better. You need someone durable enough to weather the storm and then flip the script. Shout out to the king, Darren the Damage Elkins, once again, because everyone else disrespecting him. I'm going to give the guy his props. That's the kind of guy you need here. So I don't know what it is, guys. Colin Anglin is one of those fighters that for some reason I just hate his face. I don't like the guy. I don't want to back him. I don't want to give him any credit. I tried to bet against him on the Contender Series. That didn't work out for me. And now here he comes to his UFC debut, and I'm going, finally, somebody who in round 1 is going to punch this kid in the mouth. I can't wait to get behind him. And then, yeah, just like you guys said, we don't know that that's going to happen, because if he gets out of the first round, then he probably flips the script on this guy. I don't think I can trust Melsik. I do think that he's a lot like the Shabazians that come out of the same camp. He's probably going to do very well against a mid to low level of competition just because of that raw offensive power. But then he's going to hit a peak. Where that peak will be, we're not sure. Maybe it's Saturday. Maybe he just isn't that great, and we're all riding on him way too early. I don't know. What I think the play in this spot is, though, is the under 2.5. I think you guys all kind of nailed it. It's Anglin round 1. That's the most likely outcome. And if Colin Anglin, I'm sorry, Melsick round 1, if Colin Anglin is able to weather the storm, if he's able to get through this thing, he's a much better fighter than anybody than Melsick has fought before, and especially if he goes to that grappling, I think the submission is going to be live once Melsick slows down, because like Lucrative said, he caught that third round extra wind. I don't know if you get there. If you're completely gassed out in round 2 and you've got Anglin on top of you for a full 5 minutes, I don't know if you see round 3. So getting plus money on the under 2.5 when the most likely outcome is a round 1 finish, if you're going to bet this fight, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I was definitely looking at the under 2.5 there too. I just don't know if Anglin is that guy that's actually going to get that finish, or what the level of durability that Baghdasaryan brings to the table here, because to this point, he seems to have held up pretty well. But then again, we only have like 16 minutes of tape on this guy to actually study. All right, let's move on to the next fight. It is the main card that we got coming up next year. It is the 5-fight main card. It's been a while since we've seen 5 fights on the main card of a fight night. But I do want to take this time to remind the 280 live viewers that we currently have, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe. And I do have the Twitter handles of all these guys listed in the comment section below, or sorry, the description below. So make sure you guys go over there, click that link, and then follow these guys if you guys aren't already, because as you guys can already tell, they have a wealth of experience and knowledge to share with you guys to try to make some money for you guys every fucking Saturday night. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Again, first fight on the main card, we got Bryan Barberena, big favorite, as always, as most people are against Jason Witt. In terms of the specific odds, we're looking at minus 265 for Barberena, plus 225 the return on Jason Witt. And I believe we are with James here. James, I'm going to let you kick this one off, brother. How do you feel about this matchup between Barberena coming back from all these surgeries and all this craziness outside the octagon, and then Jason Witt, who seems to, just blow on his chin, he might go out?
Yeah, tell me about it, man. Money line, Jason Witt last time out against Matthew Semmelsberger. But I did hedge it, not hedge, but I also bet the under. So I actually broke even, because I knew he could die. And, he could die again here. Bryan Barberena definitely doesn't hit as hard as Semmelsberger, but I think that, the attritional game of Barberena probably is going to win him the fight here. When you see minus 300 and stuff on Bryan Barberena, it's not like it's not an auto bet, right? You don't rush into it like, God, I want to bet this dude at minus 300. And I don't think Jason Witt's a terrible fighter. I just think he's very, very vulnerable, like he's got a decent wrestling game. Strickland obviously takes some work, but yeah, I think Bryan Barberena is going to win this fight, as you can tell. I think he's going to win it inside the distance, like plus 100. So still getting plus money on that play. What else do I want to say about this fight? Yeah, look, I think Jason Witt's probably going to have some early success. I don't think he's going to die within the first 10 seconds. I think he's going to probably be able to get some takedowns, but Bam Bam, he would never just lie down, right? You've never seen that before. Even Anthony Ivy last time out, he took him down like 5 or 6 times. Kept getting back to his feet. And when he got back to his feet, he did punish Anthony Ivy. There was a couple of times Anthony Ivy looked a little bit wobbled in that fight. And it is Anthony Ivy, but then also it is Jason Witt, right? So Jason Witt's been stopped in every single one of his losses. So I just think come that second round, if it gets there, come that third round, I think Jason Witt's going to be tired from all the wrestling he's going to have to do, because Bryan's not going to let him get anything for free. If he does take him down, he's going to get straight back up to his feet, or he will work to get back up to his feet, push himself to the cage, get back up to his feet, and then he's going to unload when he is on the feet. I think Jason Witt's going to be tired by that second round from trying to take him down, and I think Bryan's probably just going to wear on him. And, I think he's going to take him out just from that attritional war of attrition. If you want to take the shot on Jason Witt, I'm not gonna hate on you, because I do think Jason Witt's, the line might be a little bit wide, but I just think if you want to play Bryan, probably should just look at it inside the distance line. You're turning like a minus 350 into a plus 100 on definitely the most likely way he's going to win, because I don't really see Jason lasting too long if he isn't able to just get 12 minutes of top control time, which I don't think he's going to be able to do. So Bryan Barberena, TKO round 2 for me.
I like it. This fight almost reminds me a little bit of the Garcia and the Gruetzemacher fight, and the fact that I feel like a lot of this line, or the reason the line is this wide, is people just expect Barberena to knock him out with the first exchange that he throws out there. And I get that sentiment. Obviously, it's not a good look with seeing Jason Witt go out the way that he did against Takashi Sato, and then obviously most recently with Matthew Semmelsberger. But like, I've never really credited Brian Barberena as this crazy knockout puncher, right? Like he has good finishing capabilities, don't get me wrong, but he never really struck me as that guy that like, oh, you got to watch out for that big right hand of his or something like that. But again, mix that in with the possible durability issues of Witt here. Yeah, it could absolutely come to fruition. But again, my question mark is, what does it look like if this fight gets stretched out? And I could see instances where Jason Witt has some issue or some success landing takedowns, possible top control. Yeah, Brian Barberena does a good job in terms of getting back to his feet. But I do think that Witt probably has better top control than what we were seeing from Anthony Ivy. I don't really rate Anthony Ivy that high anymore, but I do think that Jason Witt could potentially get some success with some control time in this spot. With that said, though, it's hard for me to shake that image of Jason Witt just getting starched. It's very difficult. I know Brian Barberena when he needs to, he can definitely put that together and find that knockout blow if he needs to. My issue also is I probably am suffering from a little PTSD, laying the chalk on Brian Barberena against Randy Brown. That was one spot where I was just like, damn, Barberena, how could you let me down on this spot? But then again, once you see the fight play out, it absolutely makes sense. And I definitely was underestimating Randy Brown a lot in that fight. But in this fight, I do think that Witt could have some success. Will his durability be able to keep up? Ultimately, I don't think so. I do like Barberena as well. The out of the cage stuff is a little bit concerning, obviously. Rumors of him wanting to retire and that crazy like stomach surgery where they had to remove a piece of his intestines or whatever the fuck it was. That's a little bit of a concern as well. But it looks like Jason Witt's almost in the best condition we've ever seen him in, at least being inside the UFC octagon, right? He looks in great shape. He looks in phenomenal condition. Saying all the right things with interviews and all that stuff. So I don't think it's as much of a walk in the park as the line is making it out to be. But I think ultimately we'll see Barberena eventually find that chin, whether it's an accumulation of strikes, whether it's one of those instances or scenarios where he gets back to his feet. Jason Witt is kind of huffing and puffing a little bit, trying to catch his breath from trying to hold down Brian Barberena, and then eventually gives up a TKO in that spot as well. So I do like Barberena in this spot. I'm not laying the chalk. I'm trying to keep him off my parlays as well, like my lottery and DGM parlays, just in case Witt does pull off the upset. And again, shout out to the people that are officially playing Jason Witt in this spot. I don't think it's a terrible spot. I really don't think it's a terrible spot at plus 220 especially. But I will ultimately be taking Barberena to win this fight by knockout. Let's say first round. I'm going to go first round knockout for Barberena. Clint, how do you feel about Mr. Barberena in this spot going up against Jason Witt?
You guys broke this one down excellently again. I mean, this one, it's weird because this is one of those fight cards where it seems like there's really only one narrative. You know what I mean? Like all of us are picking on the same exact story beats on all of these fights because there's just not a whole lot of other ways you can imagine the fight going. Like Jason Witt is going to engage in the grappling because he has to. He's either going to smother Brian Barberena and win a decision, or he's going to get knocked out when Brian Barberena gets up. There's differences in their striking on the feet. Barberena is a much better striker, much higher level competition, and it all comes down to the durability of Jason Witt. Like you mentioned, Locke, he's in great shape. He looks like Witt's in the best shape of his life, so that could be an issue here. Something that kind of sticks out for me, though, something different from what everybody's talking about, is if you listen to these guys' interviews, if you listen to them talk, Brian Barberena was talking about retiring before his last fight against Anthony Ivy. That was a big storyline coming in against Anthony Ivy, was people were scared to lay the chalk on Barb because they thought he was hanging it up. And now that seems to kind of have rolled over into his next fight. But if you listen to his interview, he knew he was coming back. When he got into trouble and he got that surgery situation going on this time around, he went, I'm fighting again. So he did not let himself get out of shape. He did not let himself blow up. He made sure that he stayed in decent condition. He walked, as they said that they had to keep his heart rate at a certain level, but he would go for walks and then stop to calm down just so he got some kind of physical exercise during the recovery process. So for me, that mentality, that mental state, that speaks worlds about a guy. Is he retiring? Does he have one foot in the grave or not? No, this guy wants to be here. He wants to fight again. And I think that matters. So against a guy like Witt, he's just too fragile. It's not a good look to get knocked out by a jab, man. No matter how much you want to say it was a fluke or anything like that, you don't just get knocked out by a jab. So I do think this fight is going to be closer. I do think it's going to be more competitive. I do think we'll see Witt have some success grappling early. And I kind of think that we need to throw that round one jab kind of out the window because Barb doesn't have that level of power and he does have sketchy takedown defense, but what he has is a good get-up game. I do think this is going to be a round 2 or a round 3 KO for Barberena, so it may not look like he's paying off that minus 300 tag, but I think eventually he's going to find the chin of Witt, and we all know Witt just can't take that. So I think the volume will accumulate, and we're looking for a later finish here with Brian Barberena.
I like it. The forever contrarian, John Stargain. Do you have a contrarian take here with Jason Witt, or do you think that Barberena rolls?
I mean, I was on Witt huge against Semmelsberger, and that was so unfortunate. It's kind of funny looking at Witt's career, right? Because I think stylistically, he's probably a better fighter than both Semmelsberger and Sato. Like, there is a scenario where he's easily 3-0 here. And I'm generally like one of the people who's like, chinniness is overrated. You know, there's very few guys who are actually chinny. Usually it's bad defense. But in Witt's case, man, like it's almost to a point where I'm like, there's got to be some fucking positive regression here at some point, right? Like, this is crazy. And you know, how and even going back to the regional scene. And so it's like looking at this fight, like, I don't really dispute much what you guys are saying. Like, what I will say is I do think, you know, if Witt gets him down, I think he probably certainly has a better top game than Ivy, and maybe has a more of a chance to, you know, actually do some work on top, maybe get some ground and pound. I doubt he can sub him. I think Witt can win minutes here, to be honest, if he can, like, kind of survive. I think he has a chance to keep the minutes competitive. Like, if it goes to a decision, you're not going to feel very good about a minus 250 bet. That I can guarantee you. It's just really a matter of how often does he get knocked out. And, like, for me, like, that's hard to figure. Like, I'm usually the guy that's like, all right, I'm going to fade past knockouts and just kind of trust that this is kind of, you know, due for like something like positive regression. But in Witt's case, I've seen it too often. And so it's like, even if I favor him in a decision, I do think a Barberena finish it's got to be around 40%. And at that point, it's like finding value. It's getting pretty thin. I don't have a bet either side. I don't think Barberena is a great defensive grappler. You guys all touched on it. He does have a pretty good get-up game. But, like, if this fight gets extended, Witt's going to hit takedowns here. I think Witt's actually has a UFC-level skill set and is a pretty good grappler. But, yeah, you know, Lucrative touched on it. With Barberena's get-up game, you know, Witt's not Colby Covington. At some point, he's going to start slowing, and when he does, Barberena is going to start getting off on his shots. Whether he finishes him or not, I don't know. I don't blame anybody for taking the Witt stab, but, like, if I don't think he can flatten him out and hold him down for a long time, it's just hard for me to trust Witt to win this fight anywhere else. So it's a pass for me.
Yeah, I think you might be leaving a little bit of money on the table if you just don't even decide to take Witt to win by decision, which is certain at plus 535. But you already got a plus 220 dog, so we don't need to get too greedy over here. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Nicholas Stolze going up against Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden obviously stepping in on short notice for Ramazan Ameev. I believe he took the fight on 4 days' notice. In he steps, makes weight at the weigh-ins this morning. Obviously doesn't look too bad. And then Stolze obviously looked pretty good on the scales himself. I don't have the most to really add about this fight. Not too big on betting either side here. I still feel like we need to see a little bit more of Stolze. Talk about a very tough UFC debut going up against a guy like Ramazan Ameev, who, even though most of his fights look like they're close, he just does such a good job of, like, still eking out decisions in those spots and kind of, like, nullifying the approach of his opponents. Here against Jared Gooden, I do think that we'll see Stolze have pretty much the advantage in almost every aspect here other than the explosiveness and the power. I do think that his cardio is definitely going to shine through. Obviously not a good look for Jared Gooden, you know, coming in on short notice, already having cardio issues. Who knows if he was already ready to go to take a fight, albeit, you know, he did take the fight on 4 days' notice, and he did make weight. Not at, you know, more often than not when you see fighters take a fight on such short notice, they usually like to take that bump up in weight so they don't have to cut as much weight. But the fact that Gooden was close enough to at least make weight within 4 days is a good enough sign for him. But it's still a little bit of a question mark regarding the level of readiness he's actually going to have once he steps into this cage here. You got Stolze coming off a full training camp, whereas Gooden, you know, just found out 4 or 5 days ago who he's actually going to be going up against. In terms of the stylistic breakdown, again, I do think that Gooden will start to slow as the fight starts to go on. I do think that Stolze will land the better shots. I think he'll land some takedowns in this fight too, which will be very important for him, especially to nullify the power that's going to be coming back his way from Gooden. I think Gooden will be the faster striker here for, you know, maybe half of the fight, but after that, I think it's going to start to taper off. So yeah, he is definitely live to find a big shot and potentially put Stolze down, which is why I don't think it's a great idea to go out there and back Stolze at minus 190. but I do like Stolze to win this fight. So I do think that he, takes over at least in the second and third rounds. Does he finish Gooden? I don't think so. I think that Gooden is, durable enough at this point in time in his career, but I do think that Stolze will get the better of him probably in the second and third rounds and then go out there and win a decision in this fight. Again, no strong read here. Don't like the line on either side. I almost think it's almost a spin in the face to us as fans to have this fight as the second fight on the main card. Throw fucking Adashev and Benoit on this main card instead, right? I don't really understand the narrative for this, but at least I'm going to be with my guy Z, so we'll try to make some fun with it when we're doing the fight companion for this fight. But yeah, I like Stolze. I like him by decision. No strong confidence there though. Clint, you got any stronger read on this? I believe when you did the show on Monday, this fight wasn't even announced. So let's get your actual read on this fight and how you think it's going to go down.
You gonna get your hair braided while you're hanging out with Z there, Locke?
Probably, maybe. We'll see.
Word on the street is he has somebody that likes to braid hair. So
I like it.
Shout out to Rockstar Z. No, man, this was a cancellation that happened after my Monday show, so a lot of people didn't get to hear any breakdown for it. And honestly, I haven't gotten to do a ton of tape on Jared Gooden. I'm kind of mostly going from memory, so everybody take everything I say with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I almost feel like this line is a little bit disrespectful. People don't really realize that Jared Gooden is really young. This kid is at the stage where we expect leaps and bounds of improvements, and we haven't seen his higher ceiling yet. You know what I mean? He's been incredibly durable. He's dug deep. We've seen improvements in every single fight that he's been in. And then the one time this guy has been finished on the feet, it was short notice, up a weight class against a monster on the Contender Series. So I don't have any questions about Jared Gooden's ability to dig deep and be a dog in this fight. And getting plus 160, plus 165 on him, I feel like that's kind of the way to go, dog or pass. Nicholas Stolze is a guy that I feel like he plays chess on the feet. He's a very talented striker. He doesn't jump out at me anywhere though. He's got a tight squeeze. He can jump the ghillie. He likes to go for that, but he doesn't impress me, overly speaking, on the ground, and he doesn't seem like he's got the most killer power on the feet either. So because of that, he's really just going to have to out-finesse Jared Gooden on the feet for 15 straight minutes. Can he? Yes, he can. But Jared Gooden, like I said, I'm expecting improvements. He's got good boxing. He's a big body in there. We're in the apex. If he does feel like grappling, dude's a brown belt. People don't realize how good he is on the mat. I think this fight is a lot more competitive than people are realizing, and I think Jared Gooden probably has the finishing upside. If one of these guys is going to land a big bomb, he probably is going to be the one to do it. So I think this is a dog or pass spot, and I'm honestly very tempted. We've seen the underdogs do very, very well in 2021 coming in on short notice, these guys that fill in. It's almost like they're snipers. It's almost like they see a matchup they like. And don't forget, Jared Gooden's 0-2 in his UFC run right now. His back's probably against the wall. He's got to get a win. And he looked at Nicholas Stolze and went, I can take out that guy.
I like it. I always love when Clint's able to make a solid case for the underdog, especially a plus 165 dog, albeit. Speaking of guys that love picking dogs, John, you like any of Jared Gooden in this spot, or do you think that Stolze rolls here?
I don't really know what Jared Gooden's team is doing, throwing him into a fight on 3 days' notice when he is 0-2 in the UFC, to be completely honest. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me, especially given that he's had some cardio issues in the past. To throw him in there on that short notice is a bit of a concern. But Gooden to me is a bit of an enigma, because coming into the UFC, I was like, this guy's not really UFC caliber. I bet Joban very confidently against him. And while Joban did win that fight, Gooden actually impressed me there, and he gave him a lot more difficulties than I thought he would. He landed 100 significant strikes in that fight, which for this weight class is quite good output. But then he comes out in the next fight, and he does a good job keeping the fight standing, but he makes Abubakar look like an elite striker on the feet. And I'm like, it's hard for me to make sense of the guy that gave Joban issues standing and then was losing minutes standing to Abubakar. And I'm like, well, which guy is it? Clint touched on it. He's young, and that's true, and he should be improving. I think, in theory, this isn't a horrible matchup for him. I do think Stolze is a sharper striker and probably a more well-rounded fighter. But, Gooden has the tools to keep this standing. And if it's standing, he can keep a high pace, and he does hit very hard. And so at welterweight, it's like plus 170 for a guy that can push a pace and also has serious KO power. Seems a bit extreme. I'm not playing it just because, like I said, we've seen Gooden slow a good bit in the past, and on short notice, that's a pretty big concern. But I do think like Stolze looked good against Ramazan Emeev, which was also on short notice. But where he looked good, in particular in the stand-up, like if we're being honest, Emeev is not the best striker in the world. I actually give a lot more credence to the strength of schedule that Gooden's had in his career. I mean, you look at some of the guys he's lost to regionally, like Matt Graves, Bruno Oliveira. He's not losing to bad fighters. He's going out there and beating, anybody who's suboptimal. And I'm not saying Stolze is that, but I think Stolze's got a lot to prove. I do think the line is probably a bit wide. If it got the plus 200, I might take a stab. But, the short notice nature of it just is a concern for me. So I'm going to pick Stolze, but I don't think you can bet him here.
Yeah, James, I'm kind of surprised at the amount of love, at least on the betting line here for Stolze. I believe he opened up closer to minus 130 and he's gotten pushed all the way to minus 195. I don't really understand it, right? Like the Stolze doesn't do much to really blow my hair back and to think that he deserves to be this big of a favorite against Gooden. But then again, I don't feel that confident about the Gooden side either, especially on short notice. How do you see this matchup going down?
Yeah, I think we kind of feel the same on this one. It seems like everyone feels pretty similar. I think maybe the line is obviously predicated on Gooden coming in on 3 or 4 days' notice as well, right? Even though he looked good on the scales, made weight pretty easily. So I'm sure he's been training and stuff. But, when your fighter's coming in on 3-4 days' notice, the line usually, a lot of times it reflects that. People just blind bet the other guy a lot of the time. That's not going to be me. I'm not going to be laying the money. I do think the line is probably a little bit off. I can't really get a good read on Gooden, kind of similar to what John's saying, to be honest. Again, like I can't really get too much of a good read on him, maybe because we don't have that much UFC tape of him, recent tape in general. But, Abu Bakr almost knocked him out on the feet, like that's not a good look. I don't like to see that. Coming into that fight, I was thinking, all right, Abu Bakr via decision. He's going to be able to get a takedown. He's going to be able to grind him out. He better not be on the feet with Gooden because Gooden could knock him out. And then the guy just 15 minutes just like outclasses him on the feet. I'm like, what's going on, right? So I was pretty shocked that happened.
Bizarre.
Yeah, very bizarre. And he almost stopped him on the feet, right? He wobbled him badly. Yeah, man. I mean, I guess there's value on Jared Gooden. I don't really see this being like, look, put it this way. I don't see Nicholas Stolze going out there and just doing what he wants to Jared Gooden. I don't see him dominating in any realm. I don't think he's going to dominate the striking. I don't think he's going to dominate the grappling. So I think it's going to be a fairly competitive fight. I definitely lean Nicholas Stolze because I think he can just do a little bit more, be a little bit more busy. He's obviously been training for a fight, in a camp, whereas Gooden hasn't been. Yeah, man, I don't have too much to say about this fight. I'll go with Nicholas Stolze, but I won't go with Nicholas Stolze minus 210, minus 220. If you have to bet it, bet Jared Gooden, but I'm not betting Jared Gooden, who got almost knocked out by Abu Bakr last fight, who's coming in on 3 days' notice. I'm not doing it. So if he gets the plus 200, like John said, then I probably will do it, right? But at the moment, I'm not doing it.
I hear you. All right, let's move this train along. We got 3 fights left for you guys. Next up, we got Gloria de Paula coming up against Cheyenne Buys. In terms of the odds, we got minus 165 for Cheyenne and plus 145 for Gloria de Paula. Clint, let's kick it off with you, brother. Who do you like in this matchup between these two contender series alum who fell flat in their UFC debuts?
Nobody. You were talking about how did that fight get on the main card? How is this fight on the main card? This fight is god awful, man. I don't like it. I am not a Buys believer. I am absolutely not into her and her whole output here. She's a decent striker. She likes to make it dirty, grapple people up against the fence. She's taking on a Muay Thai classic striker in Gloria de Paula. Neither of these women have 10 fights worth of, experience here. I don't fathom how Cheyenne Buys is minus 200 here. I really think that the public perception of Jinh Yu Frey is so low that the fact that Gloria de Paula lost to Jinh Yu Frey, I think that's why we're getting this number. And I think that's a bit of a recency bias issue. I don't believe that. I think this fight is extremely close. Gloria de Paula is going to be taller. She's longer. She's going to be the better striker. I know a lot of people scoff at that because she lost to Jinh Yu Frey, but the fact of the matter is she lost to Jinh Yu Frey via grappling, not via striking. So people are kind of mixing those two things up, I think. I think this fight is going to be very close. I think it's going to be very competitive. Cheyenne Buys, maybe she can grind on Gloria de Paula the way that Jinh Yu Frey did, but I don't think she'll be quite as successful at it as everybody thinks because Jinh Yu Frey is a tank and she gets on top of people, has heavy top control. Baez is a little bit smaller. She's thinner. She's more lengthy and lithe. And I think that that's going to create opportunities for Gloria Paula to actually work a little bit of a get-up game. And after the last loss she took, she's going to have worked on her grappling. She's going to have worked on her get-up game. You kind of got to expect improvements from both women. You can't see much worse debuts from either one. So I'm expecting improvements on both sides. Dog or pass, I'll take the chick that's got the 4-inch reach advantage. I'll take the chick that's got the 2-inch height advantage. And man, I think this one's going to get, this might be a sleeper for fight of the night, because really if these two are pissed off and they decide to go to war in the clinch, they could just bang this thing out for 15 minutes. This one actually might turn up to be one of the more exciting fights of the card, but I think it's going to be close. I do think it'll be a split decision. So for that reason, I'm probably not going to put my money on it, but I'd be very, very excited to watch Gloria Paula land a clinch knee and KO Cheyenne Baez. That would be fun.
Jesus. Clint does not like I'll follow you home, girl. But John, how do you feel about this matchup?
Well, first of all, we all know why this is on the main card. Let's be honest. I don't think it needs to be said. but I think Cheyenne Baez is going to take care of business pretty easily, to be honest with you. I get it, and I do kind of agree with Clint. It's like, yeah, they both have under 10 fights. That's worrisome. And I don't really hold the Frey fight against Gloria Paula. Pretty much, I don't hold any fight against a debutante where they fight someone who's got triple the experience, who has a grappling edge. It's really hard to do that. A lot of times we get excited about these young prospects and just ignore, what experience really means, especially people who have been fighting at this level. What I do hold against Gloria Paula is if you go back less than 2 years ago, her fight with Isabella Padua, I don't rate Padua at all. We saw her get out grappled by Ariane Lipski. You really have nothing for her. And Padua was a small girl, and she was closing distance like crazy and lighting her up. Basically did whatever she wanted to Paula, dominated that fight and won it. And you go, it's like, oh, maybe Paula made improvements. She beat Macias on Contender Series. If Macias is not, that girl was never sniffing the UFC, even if she won that fight. Let's be honest here. And so that tells me really nothing. And so we get Baez here, and Baez, it's weird because she looks so bad against Ruiz. It's very easy to say, well, maybe she doesn't have a grappling edge. I just don't really think she was well prepared for that fight and that position. Now, why she wasn't prepared for kind of a day one jiu-jitsu position, I don't really know. That's kind of hard to explain. But I do think in watching the tape, look, the striking, I think, technically is somewhat even, but Baez is so much more aggressive and willing to bite down, go forward, and unload. And, I saw what Padua did to her, and I think Baez is much, much better as a striker than Padua is. And so I favor Baez on the feet. I obviously favor her in the clinch. And I think the reality is, Baez doesn't wrestle a ton, but she's not horrible when she wants to, especially for WMA at the lower level. And I kind of think she can probably put Gloria down whenever she wants. And we saw basically no ability to get off her back against Frey. You look at when Frey fought Loma Lukebunmi, Lukebunmi has a lot of holes grappling and was able to work up with not much problem against Frey. DePaula got stuck on her back for 9 minutes in that fight. I hate to feel to make such a passionate case about a WMMA favorite in her second fight where they're both 0-1, but it's I just think Baez is a lot more skilled. I haven't seen anything from DePaula to make me think she's ready for this level.
Loma would eat both of these women's lunch and then beat up their boyfriends.
Yeah, but this ain't Loma. This ain't Loma. James, how do you feel about this matchup? Do you have the feelings like Clint where he just wants to completely pass in the spot, or do you feel as strongly as John does on one side?
Yeah, I have to say, man, I'm going to agree with Clint on this fight because I just feel like every take I've seen, and I watched, shout out to my man Z, I watched his podcast earlier, on and off, and everyone's coming on there Baez is going to do this, Baez is going to do that. Man, I don't understand the super, super confident. Yeah, I think I saw that was you.
Yeah, I was the first guy.
There was
but the other two, but in fairness, the other two guys did the same thing. But continue.
Yeah, they did, right? It's all a blur. All I see is just Baez love, and I'm gonna look real stupid because, by the way, I'm not saying Gloria Paula is gonna win or anything. But what I am saying is that I don't know how you can be super confident on Baez at this price, right? It's not like a pick'em, right? It's at this price. If it was a pick'em, look, basically how I break this down is that I can't get past minus 150 Baez. I can't get past 60%, right? These girls are so fucking inexperienced. It's ridiculous. There was no fight IQ from Baez last fight. Forget about the head and arm throw. Everyone wants to talk about okay, she's not going to get head and arm throw this fight, so completely throw the fight out. No. Nothing to do with the head and arm throw. It's to do with the fight IQ, right? In fight, right? It's not the head and arm throw. It's staying away from the head and arm throw, distance, just a different game plan in fight. It's the fight IQ, right? It's not the specific move that's going to not get done on her this time. Look, I feel like Byers is 60%, so I think she's got the volume upside, the aggression, like John said. But if you go back and watch that the Padua fight against the Paula, she wasn't fighting with the same aggression Baze does. It's a different aggression. Baze is more of that striking aggression, like she will pick you apart, try and throw heavy strikes, right? The Padua a lot of the time was really, really grinding her up against the cage. She was biting down. She made it really, really ugly. I don't think Baze makes things especially ugly. So I do, because that wasn't a good look, that fight. I must admit that the Padua fight wasn't a good look, but I don't think that Baze is going to be able to, implement the exact same game plan. I don't think she'll want to make it as ugly. I feel like the striking's fairly even. I do give the aggression and the output, the volume on Byers' side. But I do think that if someone told me, okay, this is going to go 15 minutes, no takedown, striking fight, I mean, that's a fairly competitive fight in my opinion, right? So if I believe that, then we have to go to, is there going to be grappling in this fight? I haven't really seen Byers shoot takedowns. I don't know if I'm watching the wrong fight, but she's only had like 7 fights. I don't really see her grappling consistently. I don't know if John wants to interject there. Was you going to say something? I thought you was going to say you have seen a fight where she has proactively wrestled.
I've seen her take someone. Oh, proactively? No. I've seen her take people down from the clinch a couple times, but yeah, nothing like where she's diving on legs 6 to 10 times. No. Right.
So like that. Yeah. So when we talk about the grappling, are you going to trust Byers to get takedowns here? I can't trust her, right? Just in general, she has like not a lot of fights. I can't trust her to get the grappling going. So I think it's going to be a fairly close fight. Look, if she does get the grappling going, she will cover that price tag, right? But I just can't trust her to do that. I don't think her fight SQ is very good. And yeah, look, 60% for me, Cheyenne Bays. But I think if you want to bet it, I think you probably go Gloria via decision at like plus 270 or something, which is a pretty wide price. But yeah, man, good luck everyone on Bays because it seems everyone's on her. So legitimately good luck, but I can't get behind it at the price tag.
Yeah, no, I clearly love Blaze in this spot, as you guys obviously saw if you guys were watching the Z's show earlier today as well. But yeah, I'm going to pretty much echo the sentiments that John has here. I do think the advantage that Paula has here is probably being the better technical striker. But in my opinion, being a better technical striker means jack shit when you're getting your back pushed up against the cage and kind of having the fight brought to you, which is where I think that Cheyenne Baez is gonna do here. Will Gloria land a significant enough of a strike to record a knockdown or a potential knockout? There's a small possibility, but I don't think that it's anything that's gonna scare me away from taking the shot on Baze in this spot. I do think that she will not pursue takedowns to the extent of a Khabib or something like that, but I do think that if she finds those openings, she's going to get those takedowns. And from everything that I've seen on tape in terms of Paula with grappling and any type of situation where she's put in that, she looks like almost a fish off of her back. It does not look good in terms of the fact that she's like striking off of her back and not really looking to work to get back to her feet. Not to mention the lack of takedown defense is very concerning as well. So yeah, like James, like you were talking about, if you want to go out there and say that this is going to be a 50-minute striking match, it's kind of unfair to do, right? Like I do believe that Baez will go out there and look to mix in the clinch and the grappling and something like that. Like we can say she has low fight IQ because of her last fight, but again, that fight is like the anomaly of all anomalies. Like when do we ever see a fight ever go that specific way? And yeah, it sucks that she always found herself in those positions. And again, I don't think that she's going to find herself in low fight IQ positions to drop the fight in this spot. Like what kind of low fight IQ position can she put in herself that DePaula is going to take advantage of? It would be distance striking. If she is completely okay with staying on the outside and just trading strike for strike with DePaula, I think that is the way that DePaula wins this fight. But I find that hard to believe given what we've seen in terms of the style that what's her face Baze brings with the striking. Go ahead, James.
Oh, you said what type of positions would she be in with a low fight IQ? What I mean by low fight IQ is not going for takedowns when it seems like the path would be there. I don't think you can trust Baez to go for the takedowns. That's all I was going to say.
Mm-hmm. Clint, do you have the same thing to add?
I do, and I think James hit it on the head. What we see from Cheyenne Buys is she does most of her work from the clinch, and that's something I'm really glad he brought up, because I kind of left myself a note here that I missed until I was reading through while you guys were breaking it down from your angle. She does most of her work out of the clinch, and honestly, man, that's a spot where Gloria DePaula is really strong. I wasn't joking when I said she's classic Muay Thai. She has a lot of clinch work. She's got big, powerful knees, big, strong elbows. So if Buys is going to rely on the clinch to get the takedown, if she's not shooting double legs from range or chaining single legs together, I think she's going to struggle in those clinch positions, and she may not even get the takedowns that people are counting on her getting, because that's a spot where Gloria does pretty well. So if Buys isn't going to be a pure grappler here, I think there's a decent chance that DePaula is able to keep this thing standing and work her on the feet.
One thing I was saying, now I was flipping on over to you, John. I do like the fact that she went kind of back to her roots for this fight too, right? She originally started off as an Extreme Couture girl. She's back over there with Eric Nicksick and those guys. We know we can almost trust those guys to follow a solid game plan, craft a game plan that they know that they can take advantage of their opponent to the fullest extent and capitalize on it. I think that Bays should be able to do that in this spot. John, you were going to say, and you are muted, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, we could go round and round forever on it, but the last thing I will say, I do take Clint's point about the clinch, but beating up Pauline Macias in the clinch is somewhat meaningless to me. That's all I'm saying. It's like a girl who has no business near that fight, and who was way undersized compared to her. It was maybe she'll do that. I mean, maybe she'll do that to Bays, but like I just. You know, you're talking about doing that against someone at such a low level, and then doing it at a different level. You may, but there's also a chance you won't, you know?
Okay. I will say this also in terms of the level of experience and the amount of experience these girls actually have. You got Bays with 11 amateur fights, which is something you do not see in this day and age, right? More often than not, people take about 3 or 4 amateur fights and they jump on over to the professional scene. But she got some solid years in as an amateur. I think she spent about 4 or 5 years as an amateur, fighting decent competition, especially on the amateur scene. Jillian Robinson, which she ended up losing to. There was a couple other spots as well. Vanessa Demopoulos, she got an elbow injury in that fight and then turned pro after that. And then even Kyra Batera, another girl hardcore MMA fans would know, not the highest level of skill, but still a very experienced opponent as well. John, I believe you're going to add one more thing, brother?
Yeah, last thing. Cheyenne is super hot. Let's just all get behind her here. Let's just...
She has that psycho bitch thing about her, but yeah, just look over that a little bit.
I'm in for it.
We should be fine. All right, let's
not glad we had a disagreement.
James, go ahead.
Don't you think it just shows what type of card this is if we're getting the most passionate about Gloria DePaula versus Cheyenne Bays?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Sorry, I do have one last thing that I want to say about this. There is a reason Cheyenne Buys went into that Montserrat Ruiz fight as such a big favorite as she was, and now people are just completely throwing that to the side because she got arm and headlock for 15 fucking minutes. I think that we have that recency bias thing where, you know, we did it with Derek Minner last week. A lot of people did it where they just picked Derek Minner thinking that he's all of a sudden a new fighter going out there having 15 minutes of cardio and being able to decision guys. Falls flat on his face. Khalil Roundtree going out there and battering Eric Anders for 15 minutes, and all of a sudden he's a new fighter. Nope. Ian Kotalaba is like, fuck no. So this is kind of like the reverse recency bias thing where like people are just completely writing off Buys just because of that last fight. I think that she's going to right her wrongs this time around. Again, I feel a little bit stronger than I should, as it seems, but I do feel like come fight night, I should be on the right side. I hope I'm on the right side because I look like a complete dumbass going out there and putting some money on Cheyenne Buys in the spot.
This entire card, man, like all of us are more we're you know, podcasters and YouTubers that bet on fights. This is the offering this week. Most of these fights would be the pass fights on any other card, but we got to bet on something because we're degenerates, or we got to make content, or we're trying to put some jingle in our pockets. Like, it just, you know, every single one of these fights would be a pass if there was a stronger offering. Let's be honest.
I mean, legitimately, the best 5 fights on this card got canceled. Like, if you just go and look at it, like Perez Askarov, Chavez Choi, Jones Lawrence, Alvin Kopilov, all of the Dawkins Abdurrahimov, all of these were on here and got canceled. So
they tried. They tried.
Yeah, they did try a little bit. They tried a little bit.
Shout out to Z. I believe he was the one that said that, like, if UFC was still going by naming events, this would be UFC Vegas 33 Red Flag, and I completely agree with it and understand with it because that is, you know, absolutely the narrative. But we are still trying to find some money making opportunities for you guys this weekend, and we got 2 fights left. So let's get right the fuck into it. We do have the co-main event here between Kang and Hani Yahya. Never thought I'd be seeing co-main event and those guys side by side, but here we are. In terms of odds, we got minus. It seems like we're getting closer to pick 'em odds now, which I find interesting. But you can still get Kang around minus 130 at certain spots and plus 110 to return on a Hani Yahya. I believe John, you're going to be the one kicking this one off for us. How do you feel about this matchup, brother?
Yeah, I like going into research for it, I was like pretty certain I was going to have a huge play on Kang here. And then like the more I looked, the less I kind of liked about it. I still sort of leaned him, but I didn't end up betting it. Like it's weird because, like, for a guy who is known, for being a wrestler, Mr. Perfect, Kang has faced surprisingly little like offensive grappling against him. There just isn't really a lot of footage there of him, basically having to be on his back and get up. The best I could find was, Brandon Davis got his back at one point and he had to fight out of that, but like not really anybody really putting him down and him having to really show either, a solid technical get-up game or, a real sprawl. Ramos took him down twice and put him in an awkward position with a heel hook, but just nothing really to get kind of a good gauge of what his defensive grappling is like. And, like, on the other hand, it's like, yeah, he's a very good offensive grappler, but we kind of know how this song and dance goes at this point, right? When you have these wrestlers against these jiu-jitsu guys, like someone like Hani Yahya, who's as good as it gets when it comes to jiu-jitsu. The odds are he's not going to go into his guard. I think you can make a reasonable case if you were coaching him that he should. Like, I have this pet peeve that I think very good grapplers should not get subbed from bottom, even against elite submission grapplers. Like, if you know what you're like, defending submissions from bottom is all about just knowing the right defense. And most elite offensive grapplers do understand that, but they don't really want to go in there. So I don't expect him to go in there. And so if that's the case, it's like, one, can he stop Yahya's grappling? Maybe. Like, it's possible. He's much bigger. He's probably stronger than Ronnie is, but I don't know that for a fact. And let's say Yahya gets 2 takedowns. Well, there's not really any not much data on Kang, really having to defend on his back, and nothing against someone like Yahya. So it's like, I don't know. Everybody was really confident about 2 years ago that Enrique Barzola was going to roll Hani, and then Hani went out there and beat his ass for 2 rounds before he gassed out in that fight. And so, like, I don't know. Could that happen? It could. Even standing, it's like, Hani, like, whatever you said, like, I don't think he's a great striker, but the dude bites the fucking mouthpiece and goes and just throws nonstop and comes forward at you. And I think Kang actually technically is actually pretty good. Like, he's got a decent jab. When he does decide to throw in combination, his striking's pretty tight. But, like, he's another one of these guys who will just kind of get stuck in these weird tempos where he just won't let his hands go. Like, he lost the Ramos. He was winning the stand-up with Ramos when he would let his hands go, but he just didn't enough against Ricardo Ramos, of all people. And then, we saw the same thing happen against Brandon Davis. I think outlanded him badly at distance in that fight. And so it's like, I look at fights like that. It's like, yes, I do think if you were to put them in front of like judges and they weren't fighting each other and say, we're going to judge who has the higher technical acumen on the feet, yes, they would all say, Kang has that, no question. But, like, that's not really how this works, right? You have to let your hands go to win fights, and Hani is going to bite the mouthpiece. And so then you even move to the cardio dynamic. It's like, yes, I give Kang a slight edge in cardio, but again, he's slowed down in the not too distant past, right? So, again, it's like, I know Hani slowed down badly against Barzola, but it's like, Kang's not the guy to step on the gas in the first place. Is he going to if he's totally gassed out? Not really. And so I'm sitting in this weird spot where it's like, yeah, I kind of see the justification for the line just because I do think if Kang can keep the fight standing, he likely looks like a slight favorite. But it's just, there's so many unknown variables in this fight. It's impossible for me to make a bet on Kang. And on the Yahya side, I think I'd want plus 150 because at that point it kind of like covers, Yahya's got like a range of outcomes that's anywhere from like minus 125 to like plus 150, I think. Kang is not going to go and outdistance him on rounds like badly, but also, depending on how he's defensively grappling is the difference between Kang being a favorite and Ronnie being a favorite. So I don't really have any strongly at the current line. I guess my pick will be Kang. Like I said, if it got to like plus 150, I'd be in for Hani, though.
I like it. James, how do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, I've got to go with Honey Yahya here. I know he's 36 years old, getting a little bit old now, but man, we see him go out there and do his thing last time out against Ray Rodriguez. You know, he was able to get a takedown in round 1, dominate, able to get a takedown in round 2, dominate, finish. The fight before that, not dominate, but he clearly won round 1 and 2 against Enrique Barzola. Good fighter. Fight before that, Ricky Simone. Yeah, Ricky Simone's a good wrestler. Was able to stop the takedowns and just beat him up. But I mean, you know, and then before that, he wins his like 4 fights in a row. So look, I think Kang, you know, he's going to be larger here. He's probably going to be able to defend some takedowns. But the thing about Kang's fights, if you go and watch his fights, like they almost all end up in the clinch. They almost all end up in the grappling realm for whatever reason. And I think that reason is because he's just not a very good striker. Look, I know a lot of people say Honey Yahya's not a good striker. I don't think Kang's a good striker at all. A lot of people say Honey Yahya hasn't got good cardio. Kang hasn't got good cardio either. You know, if you want to beat Honey Yahya, you need to defend the takedowns and have good cardio. I don't think Kang's going to defend the takedowns. And even if he does, I think he's going to initiate the grappling at some point. And then he hasn't got good cardio either. So I don't think he's going to outpace Honey Yahya. So that means that at some point in this fight, and at a lot of points, in my opinion, it's going to be in the grappling realm. I favor Honey Yahya in the grappling realm a lot more than Kang. You know, look, he might be able to take Honey Yahya down. And I do think Kang's a decent offensive grappler. I mean, he definitely will be able to take him down. But I think Honey Yahya could probably get a sweep there. Look, if I'm thinking that this fight is definitely going to be in the grappling realm for a lot of the fight, like 8-9 minutes, then I kind of have to take Honey Yahya here, right? Obviously, there's other variables that go into it. But without talking about this fight for 30 minutes, which is what I can do when I talk about fights, I often go off on rants and stuff. To keep it short, I just think that a lot of the fight's going to be contested in the grappling realm, and I'm favoring Honey Yahya to at least win 2 of them 3 rounds. I don't necessarily think he's going to get a sub, which is what he does to a lot of people. I do think Kang can probably be responsible defensively. I've seen him go against decent grapplers, not Honey Yahya level, but he's able to stay safe and stuff. But I think Honey Yahya is going to be able to do enough to bank a couple of rounds, and I think he's going to win this fight, even at the ripe old age of 36. I think he's got a last hurrah in him. Kang's been off for 2 years. Honey Yahya's been fighting consistently at this UFC level. Kang's coming off a layoff. I think Yahya's going to get it done, man.
John, you want to add?
Yeah, just real quick. Something I hadn't really thought of really before Lucrative started talking. I don't know why it made me think of it, but you know, Enrique Barzola actually held up against Movsar Evloev in the grappling and didn't really hold up by Hadi was fresh, which I just think is kind of an interesting consideration that I hadn't really considered.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You guys are right in terms of the fact that Kang has definitely been off for a while. I believe his last fight was actually December of 2019. And in that amount of time, we've seen Honey Yahya step inside the cage twice, obviously giving up that draw to Mr. Enrique Barzola. And then obviously the next fight where he was able to submit Ray Rodriguez, who, let's be honest, doesn't even really deserve to be inside the UFC. So good win for Yahya there to at least get a W on his record at this point in his career. But Kang is one of those guys that I actually used to be pretty high on. But then when he goes in there and actually has some of these fights and makes them a lot more competitive than they should be, then you're like, fuck, like, oh, where is this talent that we were so believing in, that this guy could actually go out there and get some solid wins and possibly crack the top 10 in this division? There is a huge question mark in terms of what he's going to look like after coming off this layoff now as well. And it's a very dangerous fight with Yahya. Say what you want about his age, say what you want about him looking like your grandfather, but the guy's still going to go out there and make a good account of himself, especially in the grappling and jiu-jitsu realms. I do think that Kang will be the stronger fighter in this situation. I do think that he is defensively sound enough with his grappling that he should be able to stay out of submissions. I always like to take the chance whenever there's a Kyung Ho Kong fight that comes up. Make sure you guys go back and watch that fight with Michinori Tanaka. That was probably one of the craziest fights that I've ever seen in terms of grappling exchanges, reversals back and forth. It was just a phenomenal fight. Again, I'd bring it up if Tanaka was fighting in the UFC still, but he's not. But that's pretty much the case there. In regards to this fight specifically, yeah, I think it does kind of work out as binary as Yahya will be strong early, Kang could be strong late, maybe not super strong to the point where he's actually having utter dominance and finishes Yahya or something like that. But I think that is absolutely a possibility as well. I do favor Kang a little bit, though. I will say this about Yahya's striking. Kang striking, obviously not the greatest either. I think he has a slight advantage there. But the issue with Yahya striking is the fact that he just throws so much into his shots that he doesn't care about being taken down. Like, he's just throwing with reckless abandon. He doesn't mind if he's like, falling over his shots or falls onto the ground after those shots and his opponents follow him to the ground, because that's where he wants to be. He wants to hit a reversal. He wants to hit a submission off of his back. But I think that Kang is going to be more than willing to go down to the mat with him. I believe in some interviews during the week, he's actually said that I don't mind, grappling up with Yahya in this spot. And a lot of people might take that as, oh, fuck, let me automatically bet on Yahya. But like, I don't think that it's to the point that Kang is actually going to find himself in a position or a submission in this spot. I think both guys, their win condition, or their most likely win condition, is to win a decision, with Yahya obviously taking the first two and Kang possibly taking the second two. I've even seen the draw narrative thrown out there, which I don't mind either, right? Like, I could definitely see a spot where Yahya is sucking wind at the end of the fight. Kang maybe having that top position, getting that control time, landing enough damage from on top, and having little to no resistance from Yahya from the bottom. Possible 10-8 in that spot too. I do think, I feel like I think highly of Kang more so than other people, so I do give him a little bit more credence to actually win this fight in the second and third rounds. Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from him. I've backed him in numerous fights in the past. The guy has a good skill set when he goes out there and has a decisive advantage over his opponents, and people kind of just, tear away from him or tear him down just due to his age and, his rickety body at times. But you got to still give him credence for that jiu-jitsu that he's able to put on his opponents. I just think he's going to struggle to have ultimate success here against Yahya in this spot. I do think that Yahya, the first round will be competitive. I do think that James is correct in the fact that both guys have a bit of cardio issues, but I do think that Yahya just shows the wear just so much more worse than Kang will be showing in the spot, which should ultimately favor Kang, especially with how he's going to be looking. The optics of it will obviously look really good to the judges as well, and then obviously I expect him to be spending the majority of that third round on top. But let's see what he looks like off this 2-year layoff, right? That's another angle of this fight that we definitely need to consider. From what I'm hearing, obviously he was serving his military duties that he needed to do, but apparently he was actually like with the Marines and all that type of shit, doing like legit army shit, rather than a couple of these other Korean fighters who are just taking desk jobs just to kind of stay active, or to stay out of too much danger or something like that. So I like Kang here. I legitimately thought he was going to be a lock of the night play for me when initially this fight was announced. But once I start to dig into the fight, I start to back away a little bit more. I understand the line. I don't understand the complete line movement, though. Like, if the Yahya comes off and rings off as the favorite when the fight goes off, I'd be surprised, to be honest. And it would almost force my hand to make a bet on Kang in this spot. But I think Kang roughly around -130, -135 is correct. I like him in this spot. I'm going to take him to win by decision. I might sprinkle that round 3 prop. I might just fucking do it, because you guys know I like me some round 3 props. And when you got Yahya in there, who looks close to death in his third rounds, I got to take a little bit of a stab there. Again, Kang, not the greatest cardio machine himself, but I do think that he'll have more left in the gas tank once this fight hits the third round, and he should be able to dish out enough damage from on top to hopefully win the last 2 rounds, or maybe get a finish in the third round. All right, Clint, bring us home with this co-main event. How do you feel about this fight?
I'm a little bummed I didn't pull the trigger on Yahya earlier in the week. I kind of broke this down and I was like, man, why is Ronnie Yahya a bit of an underdog here? And I thought money was going to come in on Kang. I was hoping I'd get around that +150 mark with Ronnie Yahya. And the line's been beat down to evens now at this point, and I'm a little bit upset about that, because I like Ronnie Yahya. I like Yahya as a dog here in this spot. What I know is that Ronnie Yahya can sub any man at this weight class, and that includes Kyung-Ho Kang, in my opinion, especially in the first round. Kang's best path to victory, like you guys all broke down, is grappling, which means he's going to have to engage in Ronnie Yahya's game plan. If he wants to stick and move and try and pump that jab out there, he does have a good jab, but he doesn't have much else after that. Like, that's kind of my problem with Kang, is that once you get beyond the jab, there's just not a lot there. And everyone's like, oh, Kyung-Ho Kang, he's so much younger than Ronnie Yahya. He's only 3 years younger than Ronnie Yahya, man. And people talk about how old and rickety and broken Yahya is. Bro, I'm bald and I'm 33 years old. Ronnie Yahya has gray hair. He's 36. He's fine. We saw Damian Maia, a guy with the exact same game plan as Ronnie Yahya, fight until he was 43. Like, the dude is not going anywhere, and he's got a skill set that's going to beat people that aren't ready to rise in the UFC. Kyung-Ho Kang, the majority of his wins have come by submission. You're not submitting Ronnie Yahya. Like, that's just not going to happen. And then if you look at his record, most of his UFC wins have come by split decision. Like, this guy could very easily be a 500 fighter or booted from the organization. Hell, I bet against him his last 2 fights. I thought Ping Long Wu beat him. I thought that Brandon Davis beat him. Like, I am not high on Kyung-Ho Kang whatsoever. And the love that he's getting after another long layoff, I'm just like, he's been questionable his whole career, and now everyone thinks he's going to roll through the proven Ronnie Yahya. I'm dog or pass here. I know I sound like I'm like super sold here. I haven't bet this one either. Like I said, I missed the good number, so I don't think I'm going to take Ronnie Yahya at plus 100 at this point, since I'm not getting the number I had in my head. I wanted plus 130 or better, something like that. So I don't think I'm going to get there. But my gut says that Ronnie Yahya wins this one. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if, this is going to be battle of the gas tanks. You said you like round 3. I like round 3 too. I wouldn't be shocked if Kyung Ho Kang gasses out and Ronnie Yahya takes advantage of it, because you don't slow down against this man. If you slow down against Ronnie Yahya, he's going to take your neck.
All right. I like it. Good polarizing opinions on both sides here. I can't wait to see how it plays out. And that brings us right to our main event. Pretty interesting middleweight scrap that we have between Uriah Hall coming in around that plus 170 mark and minus 195 on Sean Strickland. And I do want to remind you guys, the 300 live viewers that we do have in here, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then obviously hit the Twitter links for these guys in the description below and give them a follow, because I'm sure they've kept you entertained for close to 2 hours in this spot. Yes, as Clint is gesturing, please do hit that bottom spot there. All right, main event time. Like I said, Uriah Hall versus Sean Strickland. Very intriguing matchup. Very interested to hear everybody's opinions on it. And we're going to start off with my guy, James. James, how do you feel about this matchup between these two middleweights?
Yeah, first fight on the card that is actually somewhat decent. Uriah Hall, Sean Strickland is surging at the moment. 2 wins. He's got a lot of hype behind him. A few funny things come out on Twitter recently as well, with the sparring footage and when he's driving in his car talking a load of bollocks and stuff. I guess it gets a lot of hype and stuff. So shout out to Sean. I'll start off by saying that I kind of think Uriah Hall is KO or bust in this fight. I don't think it's a crazy hot take saying that. I don't think it's a crazy hot take saying Uriah Hall is kind of KO or bust in a lot of his fights, really. If you go back and watch his tape, oftentimes he's losing the fight until he's not losing the fight, right? Which obviously shows his ability to finish the fight, but it also shows his ability to kind of let the minutes slip away from him. Against someone like Sean Strickland, who does pump out a lot of volume, who will get in your face, will throw out the jab consistently, it's probably not a good... Well, it's probably a very good indicator to say that Sean Strickland, he is probably going to win this fight until he gets knocked out, right? So that's why I'm saying it's KO or bust. I do think Sean Strickland's probably going to give Uriah Hall a decent chance to knock him out. Sean kind of walks in straight lines. He doesn't really have great movement, although I will say in a Brendan Allen fight, he showed a very good ability to fight going backwards, because Brendan Allen was pressuring most of that fight. And then obviously in the Jotko fight, he showed an ability to fight going forwards, although I think he should have cut off the cage a lot better against Jotko than he did. He was kind of just following him around in a circle, right? If he was able to cut him off, I think he probably could have got a finish there. So I think obviously he's going to be the aggressor in this fight, but I think he's going to give Uriah Hall chances to finish him. He has that boxing style where he kind of just walks you down, hands up. It's not really too much head movement in his style. I think the grappling path is there for him, but obviously his fight IQ is almost non-existent at this point, because he just doesn't do the things that he should do. I mean, we'll go back to that Jack Marshman fight, third round come. Jack Marshman, the only chance of him winning is, a knockout, and the guy's pointing to the ground with 15 seconds left in the fight, telling Jack Marshman, I will give you a chance to win. Let's stand and bang, which is, all right, it's good for entertainment, but it's not good for putting your money on it, because if you got your money on Sean and he's doing that, you're not going to be entertained, So I don't really give Sean a big chance, or I don't know what you would call it, but a big chance of taking Uriah down, which is, probably his best path there. Look, I think Sean's going to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to touch the chin of Uriah Hall quite often. I think he'll probably break Uriah Hall late, round 3, round 4. I wouldn't be super surprised in the fight going to decision. I know a lot of people will probably be surprised at me saying that, but I wouldn't be extremely surprised. But look, I'm going to go, to wrap it up, I'll go with Sean Strickland to win in round 3, round 4. But I will say that, if you are taking a shot on Uriah Hall, I'd say just play as inside the distance line or KO line, plus 300. I think there's going to be ample opportunity for that to hit, man. I really do. I think Sean's going to take a couple of whacks. Now, is his chin going to be able to hold up? Maybe. I think it will, but plus 300, take a little flyer on it. I don't hate it. yeah, that's my prediction. Sean in round 3.
Yeah, I think we might share all the same sentiments for this fight, where it's pretty much Sean Strickland's going to be winning this fight up until the point Uriah Hall KOs him, or he finds the finish himself, or this fight goes the full 25 minutes. Sean Strickland was definitely in the lead or in the running to be my lock of the night play for this weekend, but it's just so hard to like put money on a guy that's willing to engage with his opponent in the area that's going to give them the best chance of winning and beating him, right? Like, I don't want to be sitting on my money for 25 minutes to be like, whew, Uriah Hall is explosive. We've seen him come back and, from the depths of hell and finish some guys, even though it was Bevan Lewis and, that crazy kick or knee, I believe, that he landed on Gegard Mousasi several years ago. But still, like, he has that power. Like, it almost reminds me of Derek Lewis, right? You can beat them in almost any aspect of the game, but they're always going to have that like fight-ending knockout ability. Obviously, this fight's down at middleweight compared to heavyweight, but I still believe that Uriah Hall is definitely one of the heaviest hitters in this division. And Sean Strickland, great striker, don't get me wrong, but at certain times it seems like he has striking defense issues, and I don't like that here against a guy that has speed and explosiveness like Uriah Hall. So the way that I'd approach the fight, I've seen a couple people throw out there that prop. I don't have access to it myself, but the round 4, round 5 decision prop around plus 145. I think that's a great spot for Sean Strickland here. I think he could break Uriah Hall late, like James was saying. Personally, my only action on this fight, I do have Strickland on just a lottery degen parlay, but I do also have a couple sprinkles on these props here. I got plus 1,000 for Sean Strickland in round 3, plus 1,600 for Strickland in round 4, and plus 2,000 for Strickland in round 5. I think if he just cumulatively puts that damage together, it's eventually going to break Uriah Hall and get him out of there. And then for Hall, obviously, just take the KO line. Plus 300 is a great line for that being kind of his only path to victory, right? I'd be surprised if he goes out there and wins minutes. Very, very surprised if he goes out there and wins minutes. If Strickland wins anything less than 4 rounds of this fight and it goes to a decision, I'd be surprised. I think a lot of people would be surprised in this spot. So, yeah, if you're taking Hall, take the KO line. You know what I mean? Don't leave any money on the table. That's the best way to win this fight. But if you like Strickland, Strickland decision or late finish is probably the way to go. I like Strickland decision as an ultimate prediction, but I have to take those stabs on those crazy round props because you guys know I love me some round props. Clint, what do you like in this fight between Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland?
Get out of my head, Locke. Get out of my head. So you guys hit the nail on the head with this one. And again, I think this is one where just most of the betting predictors are going to see this fight relatively the same way. But what I've got for you is a slightly different slice on this thing. I've been a Uriah Hall backer. I've been a guy who's been leading the charge, being like, this guy is not as bad as people, want to say he is, when he was coming off that skid where he was like 1-4 in his last 5, fighting for his job, about to lose it. And then he gets Bevon Lewis. And I took him in that spot as a big plus 200 underdog, and a lot of people called me an idiot for doing so. He was losing that fight until he came back and got a miraculous 3rd round knockout. So I lined up and I backed him against Antonio Carlos Jr. his next time out. That was a split decision win. That very easily could have gone to ACJ with that 3rd round being the way that it was. It was close. It was hairy. And then I backed him very proudly against Anderson Silva because a 5-round main event against a busted old man who doesn't have anything left in the tank. You knew he was eventually going to find that bomb. And he does, but it took him until the 4th round to do it. And he was arguably losing to Anderson Silva until that point. So he has come from the dead in all 3 of those fights that he came back and got the wins in. And then Chris Weidman knocks himself out. Like, let's be real. Uriah Hall is riding high off his TKO victory over Chris Weidman. Get the fuck out of here. Like, he didn't do a damn thing. He checked 1 leg kick and Weidman took himself out of that fight. So Uriah just needs to chill a bit on that because he didn't do a damn thing in that fight to get that win. So I think there's we said it before, recency bias. There's a ton of recency bias right now on Uriah Hall. He's on a 4-fight win streak, 3 of those 4 by finish, and everyone's dog money. I got dog money on Uriah Hall. And they go back to the narrative they used on Anderson Silva. It's a 5-round main event. He's got all day to catch that glorious shot. Well, what Sean Strickland is going to do that none of these guys did is get in his face. You can't spin when you've got a guy in boxing range. There's no spinning heel kick from there. So Uriah Hall is going to have to start quick if he wants to be in this fight. Uriah Hall doesn't start quick. Sean Strickland is going to be in his face until he eats a giant bomb of some kind of a counter and drops dead, or he's just going to break Uriah Hall. And people forget, when Hall actually fights aggressive, offensive power strikers, he's got 4 knockout losses. He's been knocked out several times by that exact type of person. Bevon Lewis, much of a knockout guy? Not really. He's not even in the UFC anymore. ACJ, knockout guy? No, jiu-jitsu guy. Henderson Silva, he was a knockout guy, but it was 20 years ago. Chris Weidman, is he really a knockout guy anymore either? No, he was dying in the third round against Omari Akhmedov. Like, he's had a really coasty run here. And honestly, Uriah Hall is one of the biggest public dogs I've seen in a long time. I see nothing but love for Uriah Hall at this plus money this weekend. I was going to lay the hammer, the absolute hammer on Sean Strickland this weekend. And then the little light dinged on in my head. And you know what, guys? The under is a better play. I got the under 4.5, and I'm going to go ahead and lay that minus 145 on it because I don't think Uriah Hall can go 15 minutes with Sean Strickland in his face. The amount of pressure that we saw Sean Strickland put on in his last fight is going to cave a guy like Uriah Hall in. We haven't seen him do it recently because he hasn't really had the opportunity to, but Uriah Hall looks for that door. When you break this guy mentally, and you can, he looks for a way out, and that's exactly the kind of pressure cooker Sean Strickland is going to put him under. And then it's saving grace if Uriah Hall gets the knockout. If for whatever reason Sean Strickland is not able to keep the pressure up and he backs off for just a second, he will catch an elbow. He will catch a spinning heel kick. And I don't think there's any man alive who can take the spinning shit that Uriah Hall throws out there. So I think the insurance on the under 4.5 is totally live here. I believe that both you guys are completely accurate. I've got round 3 for Sean Strickland predicted as the way I think this fight is going to end. Locke, I'm probably going to sprinkle the 3, 4, and 5 props the same way you did because those lines are stupid and awesome, and I love those big plus numbers. But I did lay 2.9 units to win 2 on the under 4.5 at minus 145.
I don't know who the hell you're following or who the hell you're talking to because literally the only person I see on Uriah Hall is Zeke. Like everybody else I've been talking or at least seeing on my timelines, everybody seems to be on Strickland. But might need to clean up that timeline.
Maybe I got a lot of casual follow. I mean, I do.
Possibly.
I've got a lot of casual followers. Most of us YouTubers do, but that's when I picked Sean Strickland, everything I got in return was, nah, bro, Uriah Hall. That it's maybe it's just sharp versus square divide. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's just the cappers are all taking Strickland, and then most of the casual Joes are taking Hall. I don't know, but I've seen a lot of love for Hall.
He's throwing shots at you, bro.
Z's probably watching this anyway. John, bring
Z
us
knows
on
I
home.
love him though.
John, bring us on home, brother. How do you feel about this middleweight
Yeah,
matchup?
like I simultaneously love and hate Sean Strickland. Like I think he's fucking hilarious. Like all the stuff he's done, all his videos, really funny.
Even the weigh-ins, like
Yeah,
the weigh-in
yeah.
stare down was so weird.
He does seem like a bit of a dick, but like the Orlando Sanchez thing, Orlando Sanchez maybe a little dirty, but the reaction a bit over the top. And his fighting style, look, it's obviously fun. He's got good hands, but I do sort of when I say I hate him, like what Lucrative was saying, I think is on point. Like his hands are nice. Like he's got a nice jab. He's a good combo striker, but he's also the kind of guy that'll take a couple shots to give it back harder. And that's something that can work, down on like flyweight, bantamweight, like someone like Figueiredo, where the guys just don't hit as hard. You're on a very short time frame to live when you're doing that at 185 pounds. At some point, you're going to get nuked and get your head taken off. Will that be here? I don't really know. Like I do subscribe to like the same view you guys do. It's not impossible for Uriah Hall to win minutes. Like obviously he could always just maybe Strickland is a little scared by the power. It's a bit more low volume and Hall lands some big shots to win. I don't really see that. I think in a decision, Strickland is pretty clear favorite, like pretty significant favorite. I think I saw DraftKings Sportsbook offers decision only prop, and it's like minus 350 Strickland. And I even think that might be a little short. I actually think that's a decent way to play this, to be honest. But ultimately, I actually like Clint's way of approaching this because the bottom line is you look at Hall's entire career. He obviously is a nuclear hitter. Like even just looking at the stats, he's got a 2.6% distance strike knockdown rate. Like that's a heavyweight level number. The guy hits really, really hard. And as we all touched on, Strickland's there to be hit, man. He stands pretty upright and he's willing to take a shot to give it back. And on the other hand, you look at pretty much any time in his career, someone's really stepped on the gas against Hall, and he has a very, very strong tendency of collapsing in fights. I don't know if it's a mental thing, but we've seen it happen over and over and over. All the way back from when he fought Chris Weidman when he was 3-0 to, as recently as the Paula Costa fight. Obviously, Costa is a huge hitter, but the bottom line is Hall doesn't really like people getting in his face and hitting him. And so I do think, unless Strickland approaches this fight markedly different to how he has every other since he came back, and let's be honest, Marshman's a pretty big hitter. He's not good, but he does hit hard, and Strickland was not scared off by the power at all. He was like, fuck it, let's go. And so I do think, we can reasonably expect Strickland to bring that type of fight. And if he does, it's very hard for me to not see his fight finishing in the first 3 rounds, to be honest. With all of that said, the smartest way to approach it is, like Luke could have said, just fucking wrestle him. Strickland actually is a decent grappler. He never uses it, but what he does, he's a decent wrestler, and he's a decent, he has a decent top game. But I don't expect him to use it. I think he's going to come out here and do what he always does. And if he does that, I think this fight finishing early is a very, very strong outcome. I think, you're probably looking at, I probably put it at 70% to end inside the distance. And most of that is pretty front loaded, to be honest. So I think any kind of doesn't start round 5, doesn't start round 4 isn't horrible here. I can't get on Strickland himself straight personally, just because, like I said, I think I love Strickland, and I think he has the minute winning skills to compete with a lot of the division, even in the top 10. But I do think he's on borrowed time to an extent. At some point he's going to sleep. He is durable, obviously, but can only take you so far in this division. The guys just hit too hard. But yeah, Strickland should win this fight. I think you could even make a case for the line being short and maybe Strickland being value here. It's just not something I really want to get involved with. Lay the -210 on Strickland and then him die in round 2, something like that. But I do think a finish is a good bet here. You want to play ends by KO, cool. You want to play doesn't start round 4, doesn't start round 5. I see it. That's kind of how I'm looking to play it, to be honest. Strickland's the side, but not really trying to lay -220 against the guy that hits like Hall in what's likely to be a kickboxing match in the pocket.
I like that you said that there's potential value here on Strickland, even though he's up in that -200 range. I wish there was more confidence that we can put into the fact that he's not going to fight a stupid game plan. If you can actually go out there and guarantee me that he's not going to just stand in front of Uriah Hall, then I'd be comfortable playing that -200. It will definitely look like value, but that's fucking Sean Strickland. That's exactly what he's going to do. And he could still win it as a good clip. He still wins it at a good clip regardless.
I bet him against Marshman largely, not because I thought he would grapple, but I'm he's got a -800 path if he tries to wrestle him here. And he still looked like value, but at the end of the day, it's you decided to give this bum his only path to victory for 15 minutes instead of just, going out there and winning the fight in your first fight back from a serious injury,
Yeah, I was on him heavy there too.
In round 1, he probably gets the sub in round 1.
Yeah, I remember the subline being something crazy too, because not a lot of people thought that it was live, but he definitely has that path to victory if he took it, but decided not to. All right, that's a wrap on the UFC Vegas 33 breakdowns, 2.5 hours deep, but we had to get into it as deep as we could so we can extract as much information as we could. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. But on the back end here, one of my favorite segments, or a lot of the viewers' favorite segments, is we want to give everybody's lock of the night play or the most confident play on the card. Personally, for myself, might regret saying this, but I do like Cheyenne Baez. She's the one that I like the most on this card. Out of everything that we have on the card, I'm not trusting Barberena. I'm not trusting Rafa Garcia. I'm trusting Cheyenne Baez. So hopefully she comes through for you. But at -175, I really like that spot, considering the advantages I believe she's going to have, especially if she goes out there and tries to take the grappling route in this spot. So I got Cheyenne Baez -175 for 4.5 units. Clint, what is your lock of the night play?
Man, earlier in the week, I would have said it was Rafa Garcia, and I know I came in pretty hot back in Rafa here, but the more I think about it, I think this main event under 4.5 is probably my lock of the night. I think that's a much better spot. I think these guys that Sean forces a firefight, and then one of these guys ends up on their shield. That's exactly how I see this thing going. And believe it or not, my guy Fox down here had some valid points to bring to the table against Rafa Garcia, and the size of Chris Gruetzemacher had me kind of raise my eyebrow just a little bit. So I'll say under 4.5 in the main event. That's going to be my lock.
I will say you guys are really selling me on that under 4.5. I'm just going to throw that out there. John, who do you got, or what do you like as one of your most confident spots on tomorrow's card?
Yeah, I think it's probably Ryan Benoit, to be honest with you. Like I said, I just played it while we were on the show, but I was pretty much waiting for the line to get to -125. But the rest of my plays are underdogs on this card, and I really do think Benoit has Adashev covered wherever this fight goes. The only way he loses is if he just accepts basically losing a low volume decision. So yeah, he's probably my favorite spot from a betting perspective.
I like it. And I believe, James, you had already let people know that Benoit was your strongest play. Is that what you're going to be calling your most confident play on this card?
Yeah, that is my most confident play. I'll give you another one, which I gave out because obviously John's already said that. I think Brian Barberena to win inside the distance, you know, I just think it's going to happen, you know, like it's plus 100 as well. Plus money's pretty good. I think at some point he's going to wear him down. I don't think it's going to be a one shot. I just think, I don't think he can keep him down for 15 minutes. I think at some point Brian's going to overwhelm him and stop him.
I like it. I like it. Shout out to the 330 live viewers that we currently have. We reached that 100 like mark, hoping that we could have gotten closer to 200, considering we got 300 of you motherfuckers in here. But shout out to everybody that actually took out time on this Friday evening to spend it with us. I'm going to swing it around the horn one more time so everybody can plug everything that they have. You guys probably are already following them, but I'm sure they got some other stuff to share as well. Clint, where can everybody find you, and what would you like to plug, my guy?
Hey, man, you can find me over at Pub Sports Radio every single Monday. We go live. I break down the entire card from start to finish. I usually have pretty awesome guests, and actually 2 out of the 3 other panelists here tonight have been on my show, and the next one is being targeted down the road. We're gonna get the entire club and sub on the podcast at some point. So find me over there at Diehard MMA Pod is the Twitter handle. You can find it in the bottom left-hand corner here. And just good luck to everybody, because this card is one you need to hold on to your butts for, because it's gonna get hairy, it's gonna get sketchy, and I will be trying to take a stab at another 60-1 parlay. So good luck, everybody.
Let's go, Clint. I will preface before I get over to John here. Get used to that face. I'm gonna keep it as cryptic as that. Get used to John's face. John, what do you gotta plug, my guy?
Yeah, I am over on Twitter at MMA Fox. Right there, you can see the handle. Every Wednesday night, me and 2 other guys run the Club and Sub podcast Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. We go through the entire card from a betting perspective. You can find that on YouTube at the Club and Sub podcast, or just watch it live from my Twitter feed. But yeah, that's what we do every Wednesday. Check it out, guys.
Yeah, please do check out the Club and Sub podcast. I love those guys over there. After I do my predictions and my videos and my breakdowns, I usually go over there to check if we're kind of on the same page on some of those spots. So it's a real relief to see some of you guys on buys just as much as I was on buys as well. James, what would you like to plug, my guy?
Yeah, first of all, man, thanks for having me on. Thanks to John and Clint as well. It was a good synergy between us. A bit of a shit card, but I feel like we made it quite fun. So thanks for having me on. Excited to watch your you're having a live chat with Z tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah, so we're doing a fight day live chat at 4 p.m. where we're just going to be taking all questions and comments for an hour, and then at 6 p.m. we're going to go live and do a fight companion, so I'm really looking forward to that.
In studio as well, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm going to be going up to his place, so at least we're in person, I can touch him and stuff, and we're not on fucking 2 different streams as well.
Yeah, make sure you tell him Clint said he was square for betting on your right horse.
I will. I'll be sure to, once the main event starts, I'll be sure to relay that message.
I'm
gonna
to get a blood on stream.
Sorry, Clint, go ahead.
I gotta tune in. I gotta see Z's face. I gotta see the reaction.
John, you were saying?
They do a blunt on stream for the
Sorry?
people? You gonna smoke a blunt on stream for the
Ooh,
people?
maybe not on stream, but I will be incredibly baked for that fucking stream. Let's just put it that way. James, you got everything you want to plug? Yep. Anything else?
Yeah, man, just follow me Twitter, Lucrative MMA, Instagram, I'm active on there as well, Lucrative MMA. That's it, man. We're going to try and smash through that 100-unit year. That'll be solid if we can get that. We still got 4 months to go. So, man, good luck to everyone on their bets on Bellator, UFC, all of that, and hopefully we can cash it again.
Absolutely. Shout out to James, probably one of the sharpest guys in 2021 right now. To be able to crack that close to that 100-unit mark in August, 8 months into the year, is absolutely crazy, especially considering the variance and craziness that we've had this year. James has been able to stay consistent and keep up those results. So make sure you guys go check his stuff out. Once again, all the Twitter descriptions or links are in the descriptions below, so make sure you guys go follow them. On behalf of myself, Clint, John, and James, shout out to everybody that showed up for the stream tonight. Good luck on your bets tomorrow. We got Bellator as well. So good luck on those as well. I'm sure you guys are going to be throwing together some chalky parlays. Usually they hit for Bellator, so good luck. But yeah, good luck on your bets, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Fight Day live chat at 4 p.m. Eastern, as well as the Fight Companion on Z Stream at 6 p.m. Eastern. War Cheyenne buys.